Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow underway on this Tuesday edition. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. You can find us across the OutKick network, which includes YouTube, streaming live there. You search out OutKick, subscribe to the channel. Chad is in the chat. Plus across social media and OutKick.com. If you're listening to this great radio partner, we say thank you. Chad, Michael McKenry joins us later this hour. Put a bow on the Major League Baseball season and look ahead to his top 3 things going into the offseason he's going to be keeping an eye on. And that, of course, is other than Ohtani, which will dominate the headlines. And a bit later, the NFL always dominating headlines. John McClain joins us as we hit the top storylines and big roster decisions being made today at quarterback. Will Levis is the starter for the rest of the season, announced today by the Titans and Mike Vrabel. Tannehill the backup. And Carson Wentz now with the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams signing him during their bye week, maybe looking to pull a 2023 version of Baker Mayfield. We'll see. That's bad news for Matthew Stafford in the injury prognosis. We'll get McClain's take on that, plus Josh Dobbs and more. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. We've been waiting all season to find out what was going to happen with Carson Wentz. That has been the storyline. It's been top of mind throughout the year. Finally, we know where Carson Wentz will be playing. And with Michael McKenry joining us, big news within his division.
Oh, yeah.
The NL Central, where Craig Counsell jumps from the Brewers to the Cubs, which has caused quite a stir. So looking forward to recapping the season and then previewing the offseason in Major League Baseball. But plenty of huge storylines continue, Hutton, and some without any resolution as of right now.
Yeah, and Chad, you're alluding to Michigan and the sign-stealing allegations and the fact that the Big Ten has notified Michigan that they could be handing down penalties through Commissioner Tony Petiti. And details about what that could include. And from the Michigan side of things, how they are lawyering up and preparing for their rebuttal in court, a possible lawsuit based on what the suspension could be and what the penalties could entail. Just reading through a number of details, the penalties range from just the reprimand, which we have referenced, which is like a $10,000 fine, and could be up to 2 games of a suspension for violating the sportsmanship policy for the Big Ten, and a wider range of potential penalties and discipline, including withholding TV, a bowl game, and bowl game revenue from Michigan, and among other things, a suspension, of course, which would be punishment for Jim Harbaugh. Chad, this is from the visual, from the optics of things for me. Right now across college football, there is no one true leader. Unless you want to tongue-in-cheek say it's the networks, which I will agree with. But we have 2 big voices, the Big Ten and the SEC. Right now, Greg Sankey, commissioner of the SEC, I would refer to as the most powerful person in college sports. He's on a lot of boards. His voice carries weight. The rest of the conferences typically just sit back and respond to what he says and follow the lead of what the Southeastern Conference is doing. They are strategically not saying very much right now in regards to all of the allegations and all the evidence for Connor Stalions and what Jim Harbaugh and Michigan's football program knew or did not know. Strategically, because if the Big Ten, Chad, comes up and says, hey, here's the discipline, we're going to lay the hammer down, hypothetically, and say, hey, we're not going to want Michigan in the college football playoff. That benefits Greg Sankey, because there's a greater potential for 2 SEC programs to get in. Again, it's about the revenue and the optics. But it's also that for Tony Petiti. Because when no one's wanting to step up and lead, even from NIL, or we see the split from from what we see right now with the Power 5 to a Power 4, where's the super conference? When does that happen? Realignment. There's no one true voice. It's really 2 conferences and the networks. We know it's not the NCAA. Tony Petiti has a chance, though, to send a message and be the only person willing to really put a face and a name behind it and say, I'm here, I'm leading, I want to do things the right way. And even though it's involving my conference and one of my member institutions, and it's going to affect all the member institutions monetarily if you leave Michigan out of the college football playoff because you're going to suspend Jim Harbaugh, who Michigan wants to extend, not get rid of. We're doing this anyway. And we're going to do more than just talk about helmet communication and how this is going to be the path towards that. And we're going to do it now because the NCAA doesn't have the leadership available to actually put forth a violation, discipline, and punishment in time for this to go into effect for this program this year, and instead would be retroactively going back and removing a banner potentially, or just saying, hey, we're going to punish you now instead of then, because it just takes time. They have an opportunity, and specifically Petiti, to follow me now, follow the flag. And I think a lot of institutions, many presidents, chancellors, ADs, are looking for that leader. And Petiti could lead the charge in this by doing this to one of his own instead of voicing a complaint about the big brother also down the street in the SEC, which is what Kevin Warren would do.
Yeah, and I think the fear of lawsuits is what's driving a lot of this. This is not action out of leadership or being proactive. There's a lot of thought coming out of fear of what is Michigan going to do if we decide to act now. And Hutton, you're right about this. The one way to truly affect Michigan is to affect their season right now, whether that be an indefinite suspension of Jim Harbaugh, whether that be them somehow being removed from the Big Ten championship, whatever that is. It's getting to them right now and not waiting for the NCAA to complete their investigation and have something happen to student athletes and coaches 4 or 5 years from now that have nothing to do with what's happened with Michigan. So what has the Michigan response been to all this? They're not denying it. No one's saying that wasn't Connor Stalions, the Central Michigan game in Central Michigan gear. Connor Stalions, I'm guessing he's getting paid to do so, but he's being very quiet, and he resigned his position. And while he resigned his position, he put out a statement saying, I was the only one who knew about it. Coaches didn't know anything about it. This was all me. So he's the fall guy for Michigan. Next step for Michigan, get all of your blogs on your side, okay? The Wolverine, others, they're carrying water for their university right now they cover, right?
Check
all of them are on their side. There was a report out that Ryan Day's family was behind it. That report has been refuted by the NCAA, saying there's absolutely no evidence of any of that now. So everything that the Michigan Athletic Department has pitched to them has been reported by their own media, and we know how the game works, trying to protect their school for access they get to Michigan and everything else. That's how it works when you're covering one program and one team. Carrying the water for Michigan hasn't quite worked. The latest effort by Michigan is something that's been reported on by Pat Forty of Sports Illustrated and now some others, that here is this anonymous staffer of another Big Ten school from a year ago. I'm guessing this anonymous staffer no longer works for said Big Ten school. Either he was fired or moved on to another program. But whoever the hell it is, they're not putting their name behind any of it. And they have now circulated, and you can go read about it. Sports Illustrated has it redacted, but here are Michigan signs that were taken by other Big Ten schools and circulated across the Big Ten. Now, the Sports Illustrated story from Pat Forty does a good job of laying this out. Sign stealing is not illegal, okay? Going off-site and trying to steal signs electronically, scouting off-site, regardless, illegal within the NCAA. Scouting off-site and using electronic devices to do so, also illegal. So now Michigan's counter to all this is, we're not denying what we did was really bad, but guys, we caught wind a year ago of this circulating amongst Big Ten programs where they had our sign. So our response was just, we're doing it better and more involved, and we're skirting all the rules in doing so. But they're doing it too. This is a weird counter from Michigan over and over again. The NCAA's got them. The Big Ten's got them. Their first response was, yeah, we did it, but look who turned us in. Look who's behind it. Now the response is, yeah, we did it, but everyone still signs and everyone shares information across the league. I don't think any of this is going to help them ultimately with the NCAA, which brings us back to the question that Hutton has raised and we've talked about on this show. Tony Petiti is the one who can act on this. I am very curious to see this as one of his first big moves as Big Ten commissioner, how he handles this and what type of authority and strength he shows. Is he going to do what all 13 other member institutions want him to do, or is he going to cower behind the threat of a lawsuit? Because what's the third piece of this that Michigan is pushing on the media? If you do something above and beyond, we will sue. We have our legal representation ready to sue you and get an injunction to stop whatever you're doing. Is Tony Petiti going to be afraid of that, or is he going to act and show some teeth here?
I think it's more about the injunction part of the lawsuit than the actual lawsuit itself. Because, again, I think the time frame of why they want this done now as opposed to later is strictly based on Harbaugh's team now, and specifically what he knew and what he didn't know. What Dan Dockett's tweeted out last night has resonated with me, because I think if you're Tony Petiti and you're going to hand down discipline, you're going to know more than what we know currently, publicly. And you're going to weigh that evidence, and there has to be something about the connection to Jim Harbaugh that Michigan believes no one has, even them maybe. They don't have evidence of this. But Dockett's tweeted out yesterday, according to Big Ten coaches I've spoken to, there is so much evidence of Harbaugh and staff cheating that, quote, he should get a 10-year show cause, end quote. That would have been relayed to the commissioner in that meeting last week, and then potentially relayed to Michigan when he met with them in person, 24 to 40 hours later on campus in Ann Arbor. And now the notice comes about there could be discipline and penalties coming based on what has happened here. And aside from everyone's doing it, this is more than just, okay, he's looking into signs. The guy is on the sideline the day before Michigan season opener for Central Michigan in CMU gear, where the head coach of Central Michigan is connected to the Michigan coaching staff. You can't sit there and say, and oh, by the way, on the opposite sideline of another member school, Michigan State. You can't sit there and say, well, everyone's doing it, when it's blatant and obvious that you have a staffer who is connected to Harbaugh, but everyone says isn't allowed to actually speak the truth of what he's found, and it can't go to Harbaugh, but it goes to other people who Harbaugh would certainly know what the game plan is and what to expect, that it doesn't go all the way to the top, the Don of Michigan football, the Michigan man. Chad, that's where the layers of the detail that Petiti must have here to have the full support of the committee that will approve the discipline. That's more heavy-handed than what we publicly know right now, which is it's Connor Stalions, and even he and his lawyers saying that Harbaugh had no idea the depths of this. But this has gone. Other schools have known the depths of this because TCU was notified by multiple coaches that, hey, they've got your signs. It's the greatest sign-stealing scheme in the history of the world. Change your signs over the next 37 days before you play them in the college football playoff. We know how that game turned out. So if Harbaugh didn't know about Stalions on September 1st, the season opener for Michigan State and Central Michigan, but the other programs were chatting about this in January, there's got to be more info that the coaches and ADs and administrators have relayed to the commissioner to have the support and the backing of whatever discipline he's about to hand down. And it's got to be more than the standard 2 games, $10,000 fine, and we did what we could because the NCAA won't. That's not good enough if you're going to do it at the level that Petiti's allowing us to speak on, which is the Big Ten stepping in because the NCAA doesn't really have much authority because they sit back and wait, and they're actually scared of the monetary lawsuit, not an injunction.
Yeah, it's also funny to me. We're getting a lot of blowback from Michigan people in the chat.
Sure.
And this is good. This is good-spirited conversation, debate, everything. And this is why we love college sports, right? We are emotional about our teams, okay? And we defend them at all costs, and I get that. Jake, who's clearly a big Michigan guy, he says, everyone's cheating, everyone should be punished. And I responded and said, stealing signs is not technically illegal. Going off site and using electronic devices to steal signs is absolutely illegal. So unless you have proof of other programs doing exactly what Michigan did, it's not the same. And he comes back and says, I never said that, but sharing signs per the Big Ten policy is breaking the sportsmanship policy. Why aren't you talking about that? Jake and everyone else that's a Michigan person has been screaming at us and Dan and everybody else at OutKick or whoever else. By the way, not everyone at OutKick shares his opinion. Clay thinks everything's fine. Okay? So if you're a Michigan person, you're going to love Clay's opinion because he thinks nothing's going to happen. They're going to Cam Newton this thing out, and they're going to sue the NCAA if they do anything, and they're going to be fine. So you're going to like his opinion on this. You're probably not going to like our opinion on this, or at least mine. I can speak for myself on this.
And if you're scared of the lawsuit, to me, it's just the injunction that's going to allow things to play out anyway.
Well, let me get into this allegation, okay? The Michigan people that are screaming at us saying, let all the facts come out. Where's your proof? Where's it that? When we're showing you videos, we're showing you photos, we're showing you all these different things, tickets purchased, all of this evidence, are now coming back and saying, why aren't you talking about that one anonymous former Big Ten staffer that no one knows who he is that sent in a redacted photo of a play sheet claiming they shared it with the entire Big Ten without any digital trace that it actually happened? We don't have that yet. There's not proof of that. So which way do you want it? You want us to not talk about it when there's mountains of evidence against Michigan, but yet you want us to say, hey, wait on all the evidence, but on this one, let's go ahead and act like it's gospel. Not going to do it.
Further headlines coming up on Hot Mic.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA because let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist
question
thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today, so. I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Connor Stalions, old vacuum cleaners, and some guy named Jeff. Welcome back. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. 6th and Peabody, our location with EHOP Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad, Lance Higgins of the Wall Street Journal covers college sports, and he's their main reporter there. Has done like lots of digging on even back to 16-year-old Connor Stalions, who had a lifelong goal of becoming Michigan's head coach. Includes this in the report that David Uppen thankfully screenshotted and put this out behind without a paywall from Lance Higgins. Property records indicate that Stalions purchased a $485,000 house near the Michigan campus in Ann Arbor in March of 2022. That was shortly before his stint with the Marines ended. And not long after he moved in that spring, dozens of old vacuum cleaners appeared on his front porch. The unsightly stash peeved neighbors and sparked the interest of the homeowners association, which isn't hard to do, but is great for this story.
This is going right back into the comedy version of this story that's going to be made at some point that I can't wait for.
The homeowners association sued Stalions for allegedly operating an appliance refurbishing business out of his home in violation of the HOA bylaws. Stalions fought back and represented himself in trial court, and in a letter written in response to a summons last October, this is what he wrote. I suspect that whoever has chosen to sue me either, one, doesn't like the fact that I'm a veteran, or two, is a Michigan State fan and knows I'm a Michigan football coach and wants to draw my attention away. He had one Spartans fan in mind, quote, someone named Jeff, end quote, who lived down the street and had a son attending Michigan State. And he goes on to write, he uncomfortably questioned me about Michigan football and what goes on in our building, giving me a bad feeling about him. He definitely seemed like someone who wants to distract me with unnecessary time-consuming things like this. How about this detail?
Amazing.
It is.
What a great piece of journalistic work done by this guy to dig up this complaint and what happened. I think if there's any, this is all comedy.
Yeah.
And having the old vacuums out in the front of his house
Refurbishing
is hilarious.
vacuums.
Yeah, refurbishing vacuums as a side hustle is an amazing side hustle.
And that's not distracting. That's not distracting for the Michigan analysts.
This speaks to the level of paranoia with Connor Stalions. I mean, keep in mind, and again, this is not unlike something that, me and my buddies probably did back in 2004. But this Michigan manifesto that he and his friends worked on about how they were going to save the Michigan football program and take it to the next level that detailed a lot of this stuff, that's not the most uncommon thing ever. It's what your diehard buddies that are diehard fans of a school would sit around on a road trip to a game on a Saturday and talk about on the way up to the game and on the way back of how you would handle things. So it's very detailed, though, from Connor Stalions. I think this specific story about blaming the guy in the neighborhood that's a Michigan State, that's got a kid going to Michigan State and all that, it speaks to the level of paranoia of Connor Stalions. I think Jim Harbaugh probably has a lot of that paranoia also. It's why he hired a director of intelligence for his football program that right there, employee of Michigan football says, I am going to bring Marine Corps-like strategies and bring intelligence into football with my job at Michigan. So, again, for the Harbaugh didn't know crowd, It is one thing to say there's no digital evidence of him getting text messages about this. But if you truly believe he didn't know, a counter to this is Pat Fitzgerald lost his job because he didn't know enough about it. They even said we can't prove that he knows everything going on, but it's his job to know. It is Jim Harbaugh's job to know. I believe he knew, first off. Okay, I'm not buying that he's getting there, getting instructions from a 24-year-old GA analyst during a game, taking his headset off to listen to him about what's happening right before the ball is snapped, and then Jim Harbaugh didn't know what he was up to or what his job was at Michigan. That's a load of BS. I believe he knew. But even if they can't prove he knew, it is his job to know. There is failure to monitor as part of this at Michigan. So that's not going to cut it. Maybe it helps Jim Harbaugh get his next job in the NFL if he can prove that he didn't get any information on it. But it's not going to help Michigan ultimately.
Well, ultimately, though, it goes back to the board of directors at Northwestern and the board at Michigan State wanted ultimately, one university doesn't value athletics, like no one would other than Ohio State and Penn State probably, like Michigan does, right? The other one wanted Mel Tucker out. And in this case, the board and everyone behind Harbaugh wants him to stay. That's because they're winning, right? Like they're beating Ohio State. If this were Ryan Day and roles were reversed and you're losing and you feel pressure even though there shouldn't be because you're still going to college football playoff appearances, Chad, what would the temperature be now if the roles were reversed and you're losing to the arch rival? It's
totally different. Tennessee's a great example.
That's all
of this.
it is. I don't think it's because the failure to oversee what's going on.
No, and I'm talking about the defense from Michigan and Michigan people on right. Harbaugh.
Yeah.
It's happening because he's 33-3 or whatever the number is, 34-3 now over the last 3 years or whatever his record is. Tennessee's a great example. Tennessee got handed over information about Jeremy Pruitt.
There you go. Made
it a hell of a lot easier to fire him and his staff when they just went 3-7 in a COVID year, and the trajectory of the program wasn't right. I mean, I'm a Tennessee grad. I'm not going to kid myself about that. If Jeremy Pruitt had Jim Harbaugh's record, I'm willing to bet that they probably fight for Jeremy Pruitt a little bit harder and try to prove he knew nothing. But here's what ultimately would have happened in that. After all the interrogations and all of the depositions and everything else, even if they could not prove without a doubt, which, by the way, the NCAA did prove that Jeremy Pruitt absolutely knew what was going on, but even if they couldn't, it wouldn't matter. It would fall on a failure to monitor the program, and Tennessee would still get hit with something. Tennessee lowered what the boom was going to be because they cut ties with all those coaches with everything happening. Immediately, they cooperated with the NCAA. I don't know how Michigan's cooperating with the NCAA. They claim that they are, but this is ultimately Jim Harbaugh's responsibility. And we'll keep saying it. The only way to truly affect Michigan is to affect them right now. And the only one who can do that is Tony Petiti in the Big Ten office. That's the only one who can do it. If not, I think they probably continue to win. The other one is, Hutton, this takes care of itself on the field, and Penn State and Ohio State take care of Michigan. And then
the committee, the College Football Playoff Committee, who has them currently third, and we'll find out if there's any movement later tonight, has them third. The one loss is detrimental to Michigan based on the outside factors, right? If you're comparing one loss to one loss and schedule to schedule, they're going to lose out based on their loss down the backstretch of the season. That's just, to me, obvious based on what the committee would do and where they have them right now.
And the example Clay keeps bringing up is 2010, Auburn winning the national title with Cam Newton at quarterback, and the whole deal where his dad got a new church, who was a preacher through Auburn and got paid to go play at Auburn. And it's pretty clear that's what happened, but Auburn fought it and fought it and fought it. The story did not go away, though. When Auburn kept winning on their undefeated run, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you're one of these people that are just pissed off that anybody's talking about Michigan, us included, root like hell for Penn State and Ohio State to beat them. Because Michigan will continue to be the story as long as they're in prime position to play for a national title. And that's going to continue to be the case until they lose. And they need to lose twice for that to happen, for you to be sure of it. So root for Penn State, root for Ohio State if you want the story to go away. But just like Cam Newton in 2010, this will continue to be the story as long as the ride continues, because that was the story of 2010 was, is he going to sit? Is he going to be eligible? Is something going to happen to Auburn? And what happened was Cam kept playing, Auburn kept winning, and eventually they won the national title. Is that what the Big Ten and the NCAA wants at the conclusion of this year? For this to ride out, for Michigan to be national champions? We're about to find out.
John Bacon, who is a New York Times best-selling author, posted this. For what it's worth, Big Ten's Tony Petiti was informed today, meaning today, Tuesday, that By
the way, huge Michigan guy, John Bacon.
Okay.
He's written books about Michigan football.
Was informed today that the two programs which fed Purdue Michigan's signals before the 2022 Big Ten title game were Rutgers and Ohio State. Not clear if rules were broken. It doesn't directly affect Michigan's situation, but raises the question about competitive advantage. And of course, they're comparing that to what's going on right now, competitive advantage for having the signs that Connor Stalions was able to dig up while doing so on offsite, on other campuses.
And what's the common thread there? Well, Ohio State obviously hates Michigan. And who's the head coach at Rutgers? Oh, yeah, a guy who was the defensive coordinator at Ohio State.
Right.
Who has ties to that entire staff, and Greg Schiano.
But how about with the report, the rumor that was out about the ties to the private investigation firm that apparently connected back to Ryan Day in Ohio State? Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports says it was just all a rumor, that in fact it's false, just a rumor, trying to point it back to them. And that the NCAA informed Petiti about that it was just a rumor, which tells us, if you're just trying to connect the dots, that the NCAA's almost they're hand-feeding Petiti information about what they've been able to obtain, because their process generally takes over 300-plus days to come to a conclusion. And there is no appeal process if Petiti hands down some type of punishment, other than the injunction that could come through a court system.
Yeah, and the John Bacon report on this, again, Michigan media is not exactly batting 1,000 with their reports throughout all this, and they're getting all this from Michigan.
Right.
But Bacon is saying that he was informed by Michigan, obviously, is where his sources are coming from. Michigan informed on Ohio State and Rutgers being the one that fed signals to Purdue before last year's Big Ten championship. And I understand what he's saying about it brings into question the competitive advantage and all that. But even Bacon says, not clear if rules were broken. Well, if you didn't get the signals off-site with an electronic device of your own, that rule was not broken. Now, the question that I would have, Hutton, and I don't quite know the answer to this, we've talked a lot about sportsmanship policy in the Big Ten. Could Tony Petiti say that sharing information that you've gathered with other Big Ten programs to help beat another Big Ten program is a violation of the sportsmanship policy? I'm guessing this policy is pretty vague, and maybe he could come back and say that hey, if we can prove that these programs did this, no, you didn't go off site. No, it's not an NCAA issue, but it is a Big Ten issue, and it violates our sportsmanship policy if you're sharing signals of other teams with other Big Ten teams. I don't know. I don't know if they could claim that, if they want to claim that or not, but that would be a question I would raise.
Yeah, and the other thing, I would agree with the opinion of those, even Michigan fan or not, that would say other schools are sharing information, intel, with other programs, not just with Michigan or Ohio State or Rutgers or Purdue or whomever. This is going on, and I would say yes, because with all of the movement across college sports with coaching, someone's always got a connection to another program of your benefit. So I don't think that's rare. The question is, how is it obtained, and what is the reasoning behind doing exactly that? And also by putting this out there, and that the NCAA informed Petiti of this and informed Michigan of this. What does that do for a competitive advantage, and how do you quantify that versus doing it how Michigan is how they've gone about doing this to some degree versus someone sending a text, right, and a coach to a coach. And that's tough. That's tough to actually come up with a punishment for if, in fact, you're going to be consistent with that punishment as other things come to light or as other coaches rat each other out for the simple fact that they're your main opponent on game day.
By the way, I think you could probably deduce who this anonymous staffer of the Big Ten was last year, because you're probably going to trace it back to Purdue, would be my guess, because that person would have it. They would know it was circulating around the Big Ten. They would know they got it from Rutgers or Ohio State. All that knowledge would be there. And this is where we get into the tentacles of this story. We talked about it with South Carolina versus Tennessee and Clemson, everything else. When is Jeff Brom going to get a question about this? Now the head coach at Louisville, who was Purdue's head coach last year in the Big Ten championship game. Some reporter probably needs to ask him the question, hey, this is being reported. Did you have their signals last year? And they're probably going to get a no comment on it. But again, this is where all this stuff starts to go when you start levying accusations, not just around Michigan, which, by the way, Michigan is not denying any of the stuff with Connor Stalions, just that they're cooperating with the NCAA. But now Michigan is starting to get their own news cycle out there on some other teams. So where do we go next with it?
Yeah, and this is
wherever we go, it's going to be exciting.
Sportsmanship policy is more about the competitive integrity that they're going to point to,
Yep.
not that it happened off-site. But the question would be, how did these other programs obtain that information on Michigan if it happened? And the information that they acquired, did it just come from a game day sideline, or was it scouted off-site?
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Coming up, NFL headlines, including some quarterback decisions. More on Connor Stalions' possible court action, being prepared and ready to go on behalf of Jim Harbaugh if a suspension is handed down his way from Tony Petiti in the Big Ten. Much more throughout the show. John McClain coming up in a little under an hour from right now. We say hello to the Fort, Michael McKenry on Hot Mic with Honey Withrow here on the OutKick Network. Former big leaguer and now a big league analyst. Michael, what's up, man? Hope things are well.
Everything's good. Just getting over a little bit of a cold. I've been a little bit miserable, but I like the deep voice it's giving me. I kind of feel like Jocko Wilkin right now.
I feel like we've entered the time of the year where everyone's got a cold or just had a cold or is about to get a cold all at the same time. It's happening all at once.
Every time I hang out with a bunch of kids, you know, whether I do a camp or I go to a little Halloween party like I did about a week ago, I end up getting sick. I think I'm just a giant little kid. I'm like Billy Madison.
Those kids, they're germ carriers, that's for sure. Big shakeup in your division, Michael, with the NL Central. Craig Counsell, winner of 3 of the last 5 NL Central division titles as manager of the Brewers. He bolts. He's headed to be the Cubs manager with a record contract. How big is this shakeup for that division?
I think it's huge, and I think it's a big reason why Milwaukee didn't have the year that they expected to have, especially with the team they did. The offense really struggled. The defense wasn't as good as they thought. And also, you look at the pitching, they didn't really put it together the way that you thought they would. It's because Counsell, from the get-go, was in negotiations with his contract. He wanted more money. He wanted more opportunity. He wanted a little bit more length. And why wouldn't you? You want security. His kids are in high school. He wants to make sure that he can kind of settle in, be somewhere where he wanted to be for a while. Milwaukee being his hometown, I was surprised to see him leave. I thought they'd figured out. With the GM leaving and going to New York, I thought for sure he was going to get that New York job, get the money he was looking for. Not in a million years did I think my guy David Ross was going to leave Chicago in such a weird manner, and Counsell was going to walk in at $8 million a year being the contract. It's remarkable. He's the 5th highest paid professional coach now. It's one of those things that's unprecedented, but I think it's going to change the game forever.
How about the fact, too, that he will make more over the 5 seasons managing the Cubs than he did in his 16-year Major League Baseball career?
It's wild, and it kind of shows where baseball is at, especially when it comes to finances. The finances in baseball are just astonishing. I mean, we're going to see things this offseason that we've never seen before. We're going to see guys on paper that look average. They're going to get $20-25 million a year. We've seen guys that in the past were probably backup catchers getting $5-6 million a year. And we're going to see somebody in Shohei Ohtani get at least $45-50 million a year, whether he gets a short term with opt-outs, whether he gets a long-term deal. I think that's, really something that's going to be super interesting going to the offseason because it's all unprecedented. And then we're also going to have some of the best players coming from overseas that we've never seen in the money they could get. It's going to be a really wild ride this offseason.
How much did the money change just throughout the duration of your career from when you entered to when you left?
I mean, if you just look at how the league minimum is the best way to put it. When I started, it was at $400,000. As of last year, it's almost $800,000. I mean, that's remarkable. My first day in the big leagues was in 2010. 13 years later, you're talking about almost doubling it. I mean, there was no posting with free agents. There's a lot of different animals, but if you can get to that 6-year marker, that free agency, you can make so much money. Even through arbitration, you can make a ton of money. But when you get to that 6 years, which is very hard to do, very few guys actually get there. But if you get there, you're going to make a ton of money.
What was the pay bump for you in that first call up from what you were making to what you made over that stint?
So I went from being about $65,000 a year to $400,000 a year. That was the pay scale, obviously in salary. So I had a month of $400,000 when I went up to the big leagues. It's crazy how it can jump that much. And then you go back down, you get another increase. They do it by 3 year 40 man. If you go back down, you still have, a little bit over 6 figures, but even that is increased over time. And then also with the MLB takeover, the MILB, with the players union, they've also been able to bump those guys' pay scale way up, especially from the bottom. I mean, it's really good what they've done there. I think it's changed the game. It's pushed out a lot of teams. A lot of small cities lost minor league teams because of it, but I think it's better off for the players.
Who leads the charge in the offseason among the things that you're going to be eagerly watching? Who leads the charge in the free agent market, and how many legitimate owners are willing to play that game with the money that will be thrown around?
Well, Hut, you're going to be really excited because your boy Mike Ellis just won Executive of the Year, and well-deserved. I mean, the owner kept saying things he probably shouldn't say, talking about money. You just stay away from it.
And he meant it.
They haven't. Yeah, they have an opportunity to be the next Atlanta Braves, but even better, in my opinion, because they have a lot of young guys that they could lock up. They have a ton of money. I think they're either 27th or 28th in payroll.
Yep.
And they've been in the top 10 before. So you kind of look at what the Orioles have the ability to do. They could go out and get Ohtani and not be an issue at all. I don't think they're going to. But the biggest thing for me is they have the youngest group and core that could really be together for a long time. Seems like they fight together. And if they don't lock up Rutschman, I don't know what they're thinking. And they have some of the best prospects in all of baseball. AAA team wins the AAA National Championship. They have a lot of good things going. So that's the most exciting team to look forward to. But I think when you look at the market, LA is completely, I'm talking about the Dodgers, have completely set themselves up, especially after letting go of JT Martinez, not posting him, to go out and get Ohtani. I've said that's the team. I believe it's going to be the team. I think they're going to lock him up for multiple years because Ohtani brings a presence, not just on the field, but off the field, that international market that he's going to bring when it comes to finances for that organization is going to be incredible.
Yeah, and I look around also, and you see all the early projections about, top teams 1 through 30 across baseball, and it's really the teams that ended the regular season close to the top. I'm seeing Braves and Orioles, 1, 2, or 3 in a lot of these preseason projections. And a lot of this is going to shake itself out with what's going to happen in free agency and Ohtani and everything else. But what does it say about those top teams and their cores that are locked up for some of these groups? It doesn't seem to be a lot of teams that's in enormous states of in flux going into the offseason when you look at some of those teams that perform really well throughout the regular season.
I think this playoffs, if it taught us nothing, it taught us that you can't buy a championship. I mean, even Texas, with some of the big names they have, they didn't have Seager at some points. A lot of young guys had to step up. Max Scherzer was on the sideline. DeGrom was on the sideline. They did it without the money they spent. And a lot of teams can't handle that. You can't take on a $100 million contract if you're the Twins or the Pirates and 2 of them fail. You're just completely washed out. You can't replace those type of players. But Texas being maybe a mid-major or maybe even a little bit bigger when it comes to market size, they were able to handle it and win the World Series. The Diamondbacks getting in the World Series is just phenomenal for baseball. And you look at what the Tampa Bay Rays did. A lot of teams this year did it without spending a ton of money. So you can't buy your way to the top. So having a core group like the Atlanta Braves, even when it comes to the coaching staff, I mean, those guys aren't leaving. You're not hearing any of those names on that bench in any of these managerial talks, which is phenomenal to show you what they have there. I mean, it's showing you, hey, we're going to bring back Charlie Morton for $20 million. Is he worth it? I have no idea. He's 40 years old. He's an incredible human being. They're bringing him back because of that human being, not because of his necessary performance. Is it going to be worth $20 million? If you get that guy in a locker room, it's worth $20 million because he makes everyone around him better. That's what Atlanta's figured out. I believe that's what Baltimore's going to figure out. So a lot of these teams are trying to do is build a core that lasts.
He is the Fort, Michael McKenry, our guest. Among the Major League Baseball awards finalists, who isn't going to win Cy Young or MVP that you feel like will win Cy Young or MVP down the road sooner rather than later?
Well, I'll say this. When it comes to Gold Glove, first off, the fact that Bailey in San Francisco did not win the Gold Glove, he literally, in almost every matrix, in every analytic, when you go to Baseball Savant, you go to Fangraphs, anywhere you want to go, he was the best catcher in baseball by far. And he didn't win because they didn't make the playoffs. I have no idea, but that was a travesty to me, especially being a catching guy. But I think you're going to see a lot of the same. I hope Ohtani wins the MVP in the AL. He deserved it last year. We had that conversation a bunch, but I think you're going to see, a shame of a bunch of guys that don't win. I think Blake Snell is going to win the Cy Young in the NL. I believe Garrett Cole, my buddy's finally going to win his first Cy Young. Any other year, you're going to see Sonny Gray probably win that. But it's been a different year. A lot of newcomers. I mean, Nolan Arenado won a Gold Glove for almost 11 years straight. He wasn't even in the Gold Glove talk. Key Bryan in Pittsburgh wins it, and I think he's going to run away with it for years to come. So a lot of new names, a lot of cool things happened. First middle infield with the Cubs in history, which was remarkable to me. I think that's something that Craig Counsell's walking into that maybe most people don't realize. That defensive team is going to be as good or better than any team in the National League next year. And if they get a couple of people hit here or there when it comes to free agency, they're going to be one of the better teams in the National League next year.
Michael, the question's coming at the end, not the beginning. The Rangers win the World Series. How does Major League Baseball address this where it's not an afterthought? It should be the headline.
That's a great question. I have no idea. First off, they need to communicate. The biggest thing that Major League Baseball needs to do is communicate to the fans. They need to communicate to each and every ordinance when it comes to down the line, the pecking order. They have to do a great job with this stuff. I think a lot of sports teams in general, and especially when you go to the hierarchy of these systems, they don't communicate well down. There's not enough transparency, not enough understanding, not enough seeing another one's reality. But I think kudos to Texas, everything they did. I'm so proud of all those guys I do know on that team and kind of the shortcomings they had, what they fought through, and seeing the growth in some of the guys that got opportunities that maybe wouldn't have anywhere else.
We're going to see an NBA version of quarterback with Peyton's company, but also partnering with LeBron's production company. We obviously see Hard Knocks. Major League Baseball isn't receptive to that, right? Why not? And to me, that's the next level of spreading out kind of the PR push to individuals instead of teams in markets.
I believe it's the union and the MLB ownership group just butting heads. It's always about the dollar. And when you kind of go push to shove, it's always going to be about that dollar. I think NFL, NBA have come to reason, hey, we're going to make a ton of money. And a lot of the players have given up a ton when it comes to NFL and NBA. But if you look at the MLB, they always go back to that free agency, those contracts. But if you look at history, 1% of the 1% in MLB are actually going to make that Mike Trout money, that Bryce Harper money. Guys just don't sign that. I mean, you're talking about maybe 5 to 10 guys every offseason, maybe get lengthy deals. I mean, it's not like you're seeing a 10-year deal year after year after year. There's been years where we skip 3 or 4 years. We don't see that 10-year deal. And I think we fight too hard as players for that when we should look at the bulk of everything. I think they did a better job this year of interviewing players on the field, getting guys to talk while they're playing. I thought that was a blast. They didn't carry that on throughout the season, but they should. But they're actually compensating guys. And they have an incentive to do that. They need to get these guys young. If they get these guys young, they're used to it. Everything's going to kind of fall in place. And I think all those things could happen. I do believe that they need more of an inside look. You should be in the batting cage. You should be out in the mound. You should see the analytics. And yeah, you should be able to follow these guys around a lot more, just like Hard Knocks. And that inside look you get in the NBA, I think they do an incredible job.
I mean, the hotel, the travel,
Absolutely.
everything for a daily sport like
Even
that.
a manager.
It's a shame they can't figure it out because Full Swing with the PGA Tour, quarterback, all these shows we're talking about, Drive to Survive with Formula One.
F1 does an incredible job.
I think Major League Baseball could be close to the top of the list of interesting and entertaining if you found the right players to follow for an entire season.
No doubt. Fort, you've been great the entire season with the analysis, and thank you for that. And we can't wait to have you in town and back on during the winter meetings, which will be right here in Nashville.
Absolutely looking forward to it. And guys, like you said, I think the players have to take the stand and do it without the ownership group. Just start going, brand yourself. I mean, I think the NIL stuff is going to get guys at a young age to understand that they are a brand, they are a business, bring it into the Pro Bowl. And I think it'll take off.
Yep.
So thank you guys. You've been a blast. It's a blessing every time I come on here. You guys are a wonder.
We love having you on. Thank you so much for doing it.
Michael McKenry. We'll be spreading the love on the podcast that he's doing as well, which is very, very good. Chad, all we get on the inside is like a 60 minutes deep dive on Ohtani, you know?
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
Let's expound upon that a little bit when we come back. Because I've got ideas for how that would work. We had a lot of people saying it wouldn't work for this specific reason. I'm going to give you the specific way to do it that you could keep it fresh.
And do we want penalties for Michigan this season? If so, there's something that contradicts that with another program on the gridiron. That's next on Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick Network.
Dabo Swinney ripping his own fans. Dabo Swinney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Swinney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. But it's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. But Dabo Swinney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Swinney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity, is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Swinney's day, can I? Dabo Swinney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Swinney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Swinney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits, or maybe the administration, and maybe watching film, whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out what media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. And then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff, win some football games, and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair, and read a book instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Just like that, the second hour is here. Tuesday edition. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Thanks for joining us in the chat on YouTube, the live stream right now. Also, OutKick.com, where you can find us. John McClain, who has covered the NFL for 5 decades, joins us in 20 minutes to hit all the top headlines from what we've seen from Kansas City and Miami, the other big matchups, Baltimore on a roll, to what could happen with the Vikings with Joshua Dobbs, and when do we expect Aaron Rodgers back? We'll get McClain's take on that coming up in 20 minutes. Rodgers saying post-game, a few weeks. Mike's picking up the question that he took about when he could return. Says a few weeks. He's throwing, he's walking without, crutches, and he's way ahead of schedule based on the expert opinion. And I think also the Jets are calling around about Devontae Adams and Mike Evans at the deadline, because why would you trade for those guys if you didn't know Rodgers was coming back at a certain time frame?
Yeah.
The expectation is he's coming back. The question will be, where are the Jets in the standings?
Where are they?
Right, after losing last night in an awful performance.
I can never tell with Aaron Rodgers if he's being serious or trolling, because he kind of has that look on his face no matter what, of like half serious, but also he's about to tell a joke.
I think this is out to prove people wrong, though. From the initial impression of when the injury happened of, he's done, does he want to continue to play, to being so ahead of schedule. It's not just for a game in January, potentially, which could be the earliest, right? It's now even sooner than that, the quick rehab process and how he's going about doing that with the mental aspect paired with trying to do this on, jet fuel.
Well, there's no doubting his motivation.
Right.
I know what he wants to do, but I've watched the video over and over where he's saying it, and he's kind of got that look on his face like, give me a few weeks. I don't know if he's just saying that just to, get everybody scared and nervous that he's talking to, or if he truly believes it. I tend to believe he believes it.
Yeah.
Given the way he's approached this rehab and how quickly he wants to get back.
And that early report in October about week 15 could be the date to circle. Remember that?
Yeah. So they're 4-4. Okay. They are a favorite in Vegas next week with Zach Wilson at quarterback. So let's say they get to 5-4 with that one. Let's just say what we think is going to happen in these games. They play in Buffalo after that. Loss. We'll agree. Loss on that one, right?
They've already split that even with a loss.
5-5. Then they host the Dolphins. That is a Black Friday game on Prime Video. I'm going to say loss on that one. So that's 5-6. Then they host the Falcons. That could be the game he comes back if you believe. I hear a few and I think 3. Every time I hear a few, I think that's 3. Could be Falcons. Then after that, they get the Texans at home. So back-to-back, very winnable games, even if Aaron Rodgers isn't playing. They could win those games against the Falcons and the Texans at home. So, Hutton, I think we got a situation where they're going to be hovering right around 500, right about the time that we initially circled that he could be coming back. That could move from mid-December, though, to the start of December or even end of November.
Hovering around 500.
If you look at that few weeks
right now, puts them in the picture of making the postseason, because hovering around 500, the Bills, the Texans, and the Chargers. But the head-to-head loss last night could come back to bite them. And the other thing, too, is the AFC North currently, Chad, all 4 teams are in the AFC playoff picture right now from the AFC North, because Cincy did enough to stay alive when Burrow was hobbled, and now they're healthy and rolling. Plus Pittsburgh wins against the Titans in a sloppy game. I mean, there's all these the other teams are playing kind of like the Jets have been playing, hovering around 500 and doing it that way. But can they beat the teams they should beat?
They were really bad last night, a game I thought that was winnable for them.
You knew from the first pass attempt that Zach Wilson was not going to have a good night.
Not a good performance.
No. You saw a good performance from James Madison.
I did.
Not just on the football field either.
Yeah, on the basketball court last night. They went to East Lansing and beat 4th-ranked Michigan State in the season opener. yesterday was the start of college basketball season, Hutton. And even when I'm watching a big upset take place on night number 1, and I tuned over for the end of regulation and then the entire overtime where James Madison upsets Michigan State, 4th ranked in the country, I have a hard time embracing mentally that college basketball season has started when we're talking about the first week of November and some of these games happening. I just had a hard time getting into it. And even with a big game like that happening, it's difficult for me to really fully embrace everything going on with college basketball. I think there's always at least one game in Maui that week of Thanksgiving that gets me interested and has great highlights from that game, usually the championship game, one of the semis. That's great basketball played throughout. Like, okay, that's one thing to get you going. And then, I mean, after that, it's spotted, big rivalry game. Maybe it's Louisville and Kentucky. Maybe it's Indiana, Kentucky playing neutral site. There's some of these games that take place that will get you into it, but it's kind of put everything in neutral until the conference season starts from that point on. It's just so difficult. We talked about this with baseball too. It's very hard to fully embrace anything other than football during football season.
Yeah.
Because of the specter of football and how huge it is with sports fans everywhere. It's so difficult to find something else to truly embrace. I felt that way watching college basketball last night. I was entertained. I enjoyed how close of a game it was and how James Madison able to pull off the upset in overtime. But it's just difficult to fully embrace any of it.
I hope that we build off of the parity we saw last year, that it gets even better from across the college basketball landscape. We're in for a treat if that happens. And I think because of that, if you pay attention this time of year, it's actually going to matter in March for the selection show. In many years, Chad, I've just thought like the first couple months of the season, especially the first one, all these tournaments, it's mentioned, but I don't think it holds much water, especially with teams that can make a run in their own conference tournament. And you have good teams that are left out, or you have teams that are not that good that make a run, and it really doesn't matter what happens in Maui. It's just it feels like an exhibition month, even though it's not. I don't know if that makes sense. But at least we see bigger matchups.
Yeah.
And that's the key, too, is can you draw in the average fan based on the programs? And with the parity in the portal and everything else, can we build more programs that are drawing more eyeballs to the sport this time of year? Because I'm going to be watching in January, February, and March.
Of course. Well, and so here's what really kind of, I think, hurts the sport overall. Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic goes in that Final Four run last year. They got 4 or 5 starters back. They're awesome. They're a top 15, 20 team.
Too. I mean,
he didn't go anywhere.
Right.
But unless they're playing a big boy, who's really going to get into whoever Florida Atlantic is playing, especially when they go into their conference and start playing conference games? That's the hard part with all this.
Especially with the CBS Sports Network package.
Well, Allie says it's because Power 6 coaches won't schedule anyone but cupcakes now. I don't think that's true. I see a number of teams. Kentucky every year schedules tough in the non-conference. Tennessee under Rick Barnes schedules tough. Michigan State is going to schedule tough.
And you have the conference versus conference.
There is some truth
battle
to the fact they won't play the huge mid-major, like the really good mid-major teams. If they're going to lose, they want to lose to other Power 6 teams. So the Power 6 we're talking about college basketball, I get what you're saying. They won't schedule the best teams from the other level, right? Because they don't have as much to gain. But
they're
an example is
scheduling based on what the committee wants.
Well, Tennessee plays at Wisconsin in their second game on Friday night, and Texas A&M plays at Ohio State. Tennessee's picked first in the SEC, Texas A&M second in basketball going into the season. Those are tough, big school games on the road early in the season, and the thought is that's not going to hurt us as much as an early season loss at home to name the great mid-major program that's got a really good team. James Madison, which is going to hurt Michigan State a lot more than if they would have played on the road against another Power 6 team.
Judge,
or on a neutral site.
Speaking of James Madison, from the football perspective, they are 9-0 right now, the Dukes. And for the second consecutive year, they are not eligible for the postseason right now. They've sent a letter to the NCAA board of directors requesting full bowl eligibility. And their main argument is, hey, we, from FCS to FBS, we didn't go through the 2-year probationary period like we normally would because we were allowed in, and we did the 2-year, up to a 2-year probationary period while we're in the Sun Belt. But they're playing the FBS opponents, and they're winning, and they're doing so in entertaining and in sometimes dominant fashion. They're really good. Last year, had the chance to even beat NC State when the Wolfpack went on the road to James Madison, and they had a great chance late to pull off that win. The only way they make a bowl this year is if there are not enough 6-6 teams that are eligible. But their argument is, hey, we're playing the schedule that we possibly that the best schedule we could possibly put together, and we're also doing it based on who we're playing in the conference, and we're winning those games. Right now, they're the 21st ranked team in the AP poll, and they won't be going to a bowl game. They are behind Tulane by 1 spot, who is 8-1. They're 9-0. Liberty is 25th right now in the Associated Press poll. Point being, they are 1 spot away from being the highest ranked non-Power 5 school. And next year, if the same rules were in place, they would not be eligible to go to the college football playoff. And that, to me, contradicts any argument that the NCAA or a conference would be making right now on Michigan. You want to punish Michigan now because of what is happening this season and not affect future programs, opponents, players, coaches, whatever. In this case, you're also holding back this team from actually achieving what it could, and it doesn't really affect anyone other than that locker room, that program, and their success. You're holding back the team having a lot of success, and instead, a team that isn't as successful gets a spot ahead of them if this were a year from now. And they've already denied the request and the petition from earlier this offseason, where it could have just been 1 year of postseason probation as you make the transition. And instead, the NCAA said, no, it's going to be 2. And here we are again, where they're good, but no one's going to notice. It sucks.
I don't even understand the reason for the rule, other than just you have to pay your dues and not get a bowl check.
No, there was
for 2 years to show that you can do it. I don't know why someone moving up would be penalized like that if they're good already once they move up and they've won the requisite games to be bowl eligible. I just don't even understand the reason for this rule.
They're also in the New Year's 6 contention right now. This year.
Well, most of the time you can understand the reason for it and say, well, I understand the reason for it, but it sucks for this team, and let's look around it or find a different rule. I don't even know why you would have this rule.
Well, it's in place, and I went to a school that made the transition, right? It's in place because of financial requirements, the infrastructure that is required on behalf of FBS compared to FCS. And normally, you do that 2-year period before you join. And then you're on postseason probation if you don't meet those requirements by the year you're scheduled to join another FBS conference. And instead, they bumped up James Madison to the Sun Belt when all of the conference realignment happened to go ahead and make the team eligible to play their conference, even though at the time they accepted the fact that they wouldn't be eligible to win the conference. They couldn't win the Sun Belt because they're not postseason eligible. So that's what happened last year, but they felt like they could get a petition that would pass through the board of directors for the NCAA after a year of it, based on what success they could show and the fact that they could build a budget that would be okay with the board for year 2, and it didn't work, even after last season's success. It's not like they're a 1-win team. And also, it's not like anyone's making this argument for Jacksonville State, who's lost 2 games now. Yeah. They're in the same boat, but this team's 9-0, and they have a chance to be a representative in a New Year's 6 bowl. Except they don't, and they should. Tulane's got a loss, albeit to Ole Miss, but James Madison doesn't, and they feel like they're right there in contention. If Tulane ends up with a loss, James Madison's the highest-ranked non-Power 5 school, and it really doesn't matter. That sucks.
I just think that the Big 12 adds Houston, BYU, UCF all these teams, right? They're eligible for the Big 12 championship in year one. None of them are going to win it. Cincinnati, another one, but they're eligible. If you've invited someone, then you've vetted them. I want to cut out the middleman here. If you're saying that you are eligible to be an FBS school, I don't like the rule of a 2-year probationary period. To me, you've done your homework, you've done your research, you've seen their revenue, you've seen their stadium, you've seen plans for new facilities, all of those things, and you have blessed them and said, okay, you can make the move to FBS. We'll start this thing in 2023, and you're eligible for everything then. And it's going to be a tough transition for some, but if you're good enough at the lower ranks and you had the facilities and everything else where the NCAA accepts you to move up to FBS, why penalize them and stop them from being bowl eligible? I just think all that stuff should be done before, where when you said James Madison is good enough to do it and they're going to be in the Sun Belt, okay, let's play ball now. They're eligible for everything at that point.
And the excuse can't be, we can't approve this because we're using this as a deterrent for programs that are not financially ready, where they just don't get the blanket, you're in, you're approved, you're eligible for postseason money. That sucks.
Yeah.
Especially when the teams that used to be in the Sun Belt left to become Conference USA and everyone moves around, and James Madison's there to fill a spot early. And not only are they doing that, the team that's still there is winning at a very high level and having that success. Coming up, John McClain joins us. Then we hear from Chad and the chat on what could we see from Major League Baseball in terms of PR.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see, like, senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm gonna go Ron DeSantis.
Okay, why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro.
There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Hell yeah, baby. I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well. Yeah. And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with EA Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Will Levis is the full-time starter moving forward for the rest of the season. Titans making that official. Tannehill's the backup. Obvious decision there, Chad. I mean, you're looking forward to the future with a guy who has a chance to be that at the position. And you need to know that going into the offseason for a team that currently has the most money with the salary cap to spend in free agency and currently, based on last night's results, has a top 10 pick. They would pick 10th currently based on the results of the season with just 3 wins. That's the right decision.
It is absolutely the right decision. I'm glad Mike Vrabel, who kind of beat around the bush about it earlier, came out and did the right thing, which I thought that he would the whole time, but it just goes to show you when coaches speak, you can choose to listen or not. Half the time, it doesn't matter what's coming out of their mouth. And especially when dealing with the media.
By the way,
not really telling the truth most of the time.
If I'm ownership, I want that done.
Yeah.
Tannehill's not going to be back. Carson Wentz signed by the Los Angeles Rams to back up Matthew Stafford. So Stafford is going through the bye week. Sounds like he's healthy enough to play after Ripon did the backup work and starting role on the road against Green Bay and was not good. And now you have Stafford back, but now Wentz stepping in to be that guy. So it's not just a practice squad signing for him.
It's you think about a year ago with McVay and Baker Mayfield, Hutton, and what they were able to do with him, and then that eventually was kind of the launching point for him to be the starter in Tampa. I do wonder if McVay can work wonders with Carson Wentz to make him look like a decent starting quarterback, at least for a few weeks.
You think he could step in and do what Joshua Dobbs did on the road?
I don't think in a short week that he's going to do that. I also think that Joshua Dobbs, who I love the story, there is going to be a regression to the mean.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not expecting him to go out and win games with 2 minutes left on the clock and drive the team down and escape pressure and run for 20 yards and on 4th and 7. I don't know that's going to be happening every week. The key is, can he just keep their head above water and win 50% of the time to keep them right there and in line for late December playing for a playoff spot?
Regression to the mean would be Atlanta beating Houston and then the Falcons showing us who they really are. And if the Texans actually won that game instead of allowing that last-second field goal, they'd have the same record right now as the Buffalo Bills. It's crazy to think about going into Week 10. John McClain joins us. Sports Radio 610 is where you can find his great work. He's covered the league for 5 decades, Hall of Famer. John, good to see you.
Can you guys actually hear me? I'm having all kinds of difficulty.
Can you hear us?
Good. Great.
Good. Perfect. Quick, Chad and I have been discussing Harbaugh in Michigan for a bit. At what level of this story would be enough of controversy for the NFL to actually not allow, quote-unquote, safe harbor for him if he wanted to bolt to the NFL, given the fact that we know what we know and the penalties were levied for Spygate?
I think that he would definitely get hired in the NFL, and I think that whatever penalties he had to serve in college, they would probably, like if he was banned for a year, I don't think they would do that. I think that somehow Harbaugh, he's one of the biggest and controlled freaks in sports, and I can't imagine anybody other than Michigan alums actually thinking he didn't know what was going on. If you were doing something like this behind his back and he found out, my goodness, you'd be done. You'd never work in football again. There are pictures of this guy, Stalions, on the sideline, holding a play sheet next to coaches, and you tell me Harbaugh didn't know about it. You still have to prove it. And the NCAA has got no footballs anymore. Look at all those basketball programs that got nothing, got a tap on the wrist so light they didn't even know it was there after the government caught him with wiretaps, recording calls and off making illegal offers. And so I think it's going to be a big deal. I think that they're not going to do anything to him during the season. Somehow they'll get it delayed till after the season. He might resign and come straight to the NFL before they have to penalize him.
John, everyone hates hypotheticals except for fans and the media, right? But here's one. Jim Harbaugh was nearly the head coach of the Denver Broncos. Walton flew to Ann Arbor to meet with him. We'd have Connor Stalions on that staff right now, wouldn't we? How would the NFL respond to that?
I think the ones that's going to go after him would be the Raiders and Mark Davis, because he screwed up so bad there since he's taken over for his dad. He'll want to hit a home run. And he's got a great stadium. He's got a great facility, great fan base. I could see somebody like Davis going after him like he did John Gruden when he paid him $20 million a year.
John, where does the Josh Dobbs Tuesday to Sunday 5-day turnaround leading the Vikings from a come-from-behind victory, where does that rank on crazy stories you've seen in your years covering the NFL?
Yeah, like I've never seen one that's crazier. And the reason is, people are, how in the world can he learn all that terminology? Well, being a 4.0 major in aerospace engineering gives him a head start. But to go from Detroit to Cleveland to the Titans to Cleveland to Arizona and on to Minnesota, and I'm wondering if all his lack of time actually worked to his favor. And now that he has a week to study and get ready for the next game, if it'll be tougher for him. But it's one of the all-time great accomplishments. I don't know what kind of ESPY award can be given to somebody like that. He ought to get one. I saw something even rarer, a running back kicking. First time anybody's kicked a field goal for a non-kicker in the NFL since 2004 when Miami's Wes Welker did it at New England. And two really strange things happened in the NFL over the weekend, and both of them ended up victories for the Vikings and the Texans.
And we'll definitely get to that Texans and that C.J. Stroud performance also. But quickly also on the Vikings, do you feel like this is a team, given that division, that we're going to be watching in late December with Josh Dobbs quarterbacking that group with a chance at making the playoffs? Or does this quickly kind of start to fall apart given where they are after the loss of Kirk Cousins?
And the NFC is so bad, I think that if you just stay competitive, you can be in the wild card race, and that division's awful. Detroit should win it. But I think that they will have a chance. Dobbs, when he's with Arizona, played okay. Then he got benched, and the reason he got benched and traded is they want to make sure they tanked. So they started rookie Clayton Tune from the University of Houston. He played one of the worst games in history. Why else would they trade Dobbs and go with Tune? And they can say, well, we were just looking for a bridge to Kyler Murray. And if they play Murray like they're supposed to, that'll be fine. But boy, Dobbs came out a whole lot better, and he's got a chance to make the playoffs.
John McClain with us. You can follow him on social at McClain_on_NFL. Where do you think, just opinion-wise and week-wise, Aaron Rodgers makes his return, given all the throwing on the field and the comments being made ahead of schedule? He certainly is. Do you think he returns, and where are the Jets at that point?
I don't think he returns. Behind that offensive line, are you kidding me? I mean, that'd be the worst thing that could possibly happen. They're terrible up front. They showed it again on Monday night when those linemen just got obliterated by the Chargers pass rush. You think Rodgers wants to come back and face that with those mullets up front? I don't think so. Now, he said he was just joking, tongue in cheek, when he said weeks. He's a long way away. What would be the point to put him in and risk injury? They're not going to the playoffs. They're not going to compete for the playoffs. The downfall has begun for them. And so I think it's just a pipe dream that gets Aaron Rodgers a lot of publicity.
And maybe it comes down to just that. I just don't know why you boast about being ahead of schedule and your rehab process being something that no one else is doing, and then just sit back and not return. Why expedite the rehab if not for trying to return?
Wasn't it Cam Akers that came back in 3 months last year, running back for the Rams? And so it can be done. Usually Achilles injuries are like 6 months.
And he just tore it again, I believe.
And I'm not saying that he can't. I just don't believe he will. There's no point. The team's going to be bad. It's going to be out of the playoff race. Why put him in there?
What was your reaction to Ben Volin's report through at least 2 sources that told him that within the Patriots organization, Mike Vrabel is a dream replacement for Belichick and what Robert Kraft is viewing down the road?
Dream on. There's no way Amy Adams-Strunk, who loves Mike Vrabel, is going to let him get away to the Patriots. And I can't imagine Mike would want to leave the Titans. It looks like they got a quarterback. Patriots don't. It's a bad situation to go up there and replace Bill Belichick unless you have Tom Brady. I do not see Mike Vrabel leaving the Titans anytime soon.
Florio was the first that I saw float this out there, but do you buy into the idea that the Commanders would trade for Bill Belichick?
No.
Do you buy into the speculation that Belichick and Kraft are not as close as what they once were, and that the end is sooner rather than later?
No, that's fact that they're having problems. When you lose like that, and it's like somebody wrote this week, it wasn't the Patriot way, it was the Brady way.
Yeah.
And that's being proved. And because they're terrible, they're one of the worst teams in the league. And Mac Jones has been a disaster. And last year they blamed it on the coaching. They go in and bring back Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien was a great offensive coach when he coached Tom Brady. And so now he's having to work for it, and it ain't working. They're going to be right up there in the running for one of those top quarterbacks. And if the story is true about that they leaked, and I would guess it was the Patriots that leaked it to Ian Rappaport, that he had signed a contract extension in the offseason, that was to quell all the talk about this could be his last season. But sometimes, just like with Brady, when he wanted to get away from Belichick, sometimes it's best to cut the cord. The difference is, what does Belichick have in front of it? Is anybody going to hire him at 72 or 3 to come in and try to turn around their organization? I don't think so. Maybe somebody like Mark Davis would, because he makes one mistake after another. And it takes a special player like Brady, mentally tough, to deal with Belichick every day and all the heavy-handed coaching that goes on behind the scenes. And you look back at all the games Brady won with come-from-behind drives, turn mid-round or free agent receivers into legitimate NFL pass catchers. It's amazing what he did for that organization. I can't think of anybody in sports who meant more to an organization than Brady meant to the Patriots, the Patriot way, and winning more Super Bowls than any team in history. I think tied for the most.
John, has C.J. Stroud already locked up Offensive Rookie of the Year based on the numbers he's been putting up?
You sound like one of the talk show hosts here. Everybody's saying that. They got 9 games to go. Last week, he had his worst game at Carolina, and the Panthers beat him. And so now he has the best game.
Well, he's got the best game for any rookie quarterback ever also, not just his best game. That's never been done by a rookie quarterback, the yardage we saw in that one.
No, as a record yardage, and there's a lot of things he did. There's been only 3 quarterbacks who've had at least 450 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Ben Roethlisberger and 14 rookies, and White Tittle in 1962. And so there's a lot of things that he did. And if he stays healthy, yes. But if he goes through another bad streak and somebody else steps up, yeah, but I don't see any other rookies stepping up. People talking about Puka Nacua, and he's kind of dropped off when Cooper Kupp came back. So I'm not saying he's wrapped it up, but he is the heavy favorite in Vegas.
John, final 30 seconds here. Currently, all 4 teams in the NFL playoff picture for the AFC, all 4 from the AFC North are in. Which team won't be?
Well, they're going to beat each other up. In Houston, they're hoping it's the Browns because they have their first-round pick. So I'll say the Browns, with Deshaun Watson being in and out of the lineup because of injuries.
Bengals and Browns this week, and then Bengals-Ravens on Thursday Night Football. Not this week, but a week from this Thursday. So 5-3 Cincy looks great. 5-3 Cleveland, Chad. But we've got questions. No questions about McClain's visit each week for us.
No, he's a Hall of Famer.
That's right.
We don't question Hall of Famers on this show. When John tells me I'm as dumb as Houston sports talk show host, I just shut up and take it. I say, you know what, I am.
But you're also Cadillac.
You know that's not
right.
what I say.
Yeah.
I know. I'm just reading between the lines, John. I love you.
John.
I love you still the same.
Thank you as always.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
Check out all the great podcasts and the columns from John McClain. Sports Radio 610.
One of the best, if not the best.
Coming up, Major League Baseball and how they can push forward individual personality instead of just a team.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA because let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist
question.
thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today. So I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Sixth and Peabody, our location each and every day for the OutKick studio. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. You can join us in the chat on YouTube. Just search out OutKick, hit subscribe, and you're there. You're in the chat with Chad. And we had a discussion earlier about why doesn't Major League Baseball push more of a Hard Knocks version of in-season, early season, whatever it might be, the time frame of this, or more of a, what we're seeing Manning with the quarterback through Omaha Productions.
Yep.
Quarterback, and they're going to have a spin-off and a different version of that for the NBA through LeBron's production company. Why don't we see that from MLB side of things, and whether or not they embrace it or not? What's the reason for it? What did the chat have to say about our conversation earlier with McKenry?
Well, someone was saying that it would get really old with one player over the course of an entire year, and talked about the difficulties of quarterback even because Marcus Mariota got benched. And then they just kind of went away from him the rest of the way when he left the team with an injury.
But it helps to have three.
Well, I don't see it as the quarterback format for this show. So if you're going to do a Major League Baseball show, the model is there. The template is there. It's full swing with PGA Tour, which focuses in on one or two different golfers every episode. You don't want to follow the same group of two or three people all year. You want to get a snapshot of a couple weeks or a month with one or two players. You pick the storyline. 1 week could be starting pitchers across the league and focus in on two or three. The next episode could be catchers. The next episode could be a couple of big-time stars. And you're not following them with cameras for an entire Major League Baseball season. You're giving the viewer a snapshot into what their life is like over the course of a week or over the course of a month, and you're keeping it fresh. You're seeing different teams. You're seeing different positions. I want to see an entire hour and a half long episode on managers where you pick and choose who you're going to follow for that period of time, and then you kind of tie it all in together with the end of the season in the end of it. I think it's a very easy thing to do. They've done it already. It would be highly compelling. The nature of the sport and the dailiness of it adds to that. I don't know why they're not already doing it other than what Michael McKenry told us, which is simply that the players union and the owners can't get together on the money part of it and what it would look like for access like this. Trevor Bauer basically started this model on his own, and there's a way to do it, and I think everyone benefits from it. Owners, players, the brand of the league, everything.
And it wasn't, it was edited, and I think it came out twice a week. And it's at least once a week during the season, and it gave access even during the COVID year. It has the swab as he's going through the security for the stadium. I was fascinated with it. A lot of players don't like it. What takes place in the clubhouse stays in the clubhouse. That's what they want. But I think in the NBA, Chad, the players have the power. If the top players, the top paid guys want to be the general manager or the head coach, they effectively are. And if you have the LeBron type guy that's going to direct this initiative, right, this show, that's what is going to push it through with the players, the access, right? Does Major League Baseball have that guy? because if they're doing that with ownership or with the commissioner, it's not going to get very far.
Well, and I don't know if they have that guy.
Right, and I think that hurts.
Every locker room is sacred. I mean, they go in the locker room a little bit on quarterback. They go into the players' clubhouse on full swing. It's all sacred. You can have final cut.
Well, exactly.
I mean, there's a way to negotiate this to say you're going to get this access, but not this access. You can make the show feel like it's all access, even when it's not. There are tricks of the trade to do that. Now, you also can't
needs to
fake
be entertaining.
it. Well, you can't fake it. I can watch something right away and say, I could get this on a highlight package.
Right.
This is nothing behind the scenes. This is just them interviewing this person after a game. But you know when you're getting all access, but it's pre-packaged all access. You know, when they go to Patrick Mahomes' house and he's playing with his children
set up,
and his wife is there, you know, cooking dinner. This is the Netflix is coming out tonight, you know, and we're gonna film some stuff tonight. I mean,
the lighting? They know the lighting before they get to the room.
Absolutely.
Right.
The hair and makeup is there. You know, you can see it's not truly totally behind the scenes, but it feels like it. And if you can fake it till you make it, that's fine. That's entertaining. I don't know that you're ever going to get 100% real, authentic, behind-the-scenes stuff unless it's in-game, which you get during the quarterback series. And I think you get that during a Major League Baseball version of this also. But there's a way to do it where I'm not saying trick the audience, because a sports-loving audience, it's not easy to trick them. But I think there's a way you can massage it. You can get a lot out of it with publicity while also not burying the subject.
I think Major League Baseball needs to give the majority of the profits of whatever this would be to the players to get it going. Because I don't think this comes down to the individual player agreeing to do something like this, because we're seeing problems with that with quarterback currently, right? That a lot of guys are just turning it down. Hard Knocks, the players may hate it, but it doesn't matter. Cameras are going to be there. The organization may hate it. Doesn't matter. Jets, you're going to be on there. Major League Baseball doesn't have that power, right? You need the club to do it, but you also need the ability for the players to be on the show based on the monetary gain that they're going to receive. That's how it's got to get going. And you have to start it with one of the marquee clubs. And then it would resonate down to a Texas Rangers ball club, who the vast majority of the casual baseball fan knows nothing about and doesn't really care about watching the World Series. That it builds for the future of learning about individual players more than just, oh, here's a club that got red hot and made it through and dominated on the road in the postseason.
Yeah, I think it's a good way for just the way Drive to Survive brought not even casual fans, people who did not care about auto racing and certainly didn't care about F1. They suddenly pick a favorite driver based on that series, and they're invested. Same could be true for Major League Baseball.
Yes.
Now, you could bring people in that just watch that series and think, man, I'm kind of interested in this Adley Rutschman guy for the Orioles that I watched for 3 episodes. I may tune into the Orioles in the playoffs now, or whoever the example is. I like this guy. He's my favorite player now. Hell, I watched Kirk Cousins a year ago, and I become a Kirk Cousins fan just watching that series. And I'm watching NFL all day, every week, and talking about it on this show. But it's amazing the power of cinema and what it can do for you. And when people can see the way you are in your life, and there's a power there that's tough to quantify when something is produced properly and done the right way. We saw it with F1, I think to some extent with Full Swing. Major League Baseball could be a big hit with a show like this.
And maybe MLB gets more of the state-run media type feel by taking over half of the ball club media rights and the broadcasts of these games.
Yeah.
Again, they have the opportunity. I don't know if they'll be smart enough to embrace it to a certain level to push that PR that they need.
What a great co-production, co-branding if you followed a certain team and you also had that team's rights.
Yes.
On Netflix.
You've got it.
One of the teams that's available, you do a quarterback-type series with 1 or 2 teams, and it just happens to be the ones that we have all their games throughout the summer.
And you see an ejection.
On Netflix
and then
available.
you have background on it later in the week.
It'd be great complimentary programming.
No
Something Major League Baseball needs desperately.
And during the rain delay.
Yeah.
Pop it on with a rerun. Time for overreaction across the National Football League. Davey Hudson bringing some topics to us.
Guys, overreaction, or is it just a realistic concern? And we're going to start it off with the Baltimore Ravens. And they're the best team in the NFL.
They're not. They are about to be. They are very good, extremely physical in the trenches, and they have an MVP caliber quarterback. But until good teams are able to figure out the Kansas City Chiefs, Chad, I'm not going away from KC. They find ways to win, and it's through their defense this year, but they're still finding ways to win. And you have to knock off the team from Arrowhead before I'm buying into the fact that you're the best. They're in the best division. They're not the best in the NFL right now.
When Patrick Mahomes says we're going to get this offense figured out, we're going to get it right, don't worry about that, I believe him. They are going to figure out the offense as the year goes on. And they're being carried by their defense. Look out. KC's got a big-time defense now. That's not good news. I put KC and Philly ahead of them right now. But I am with Hutton that they're certainly in that group of 3 or 4 teams under consideration as the best team in the NFL, but not yet. It's still, to me, I would put Philly, from what I've seen, slightly ahead of Kansas City, but I'm putting both those teams ahead of Baltimore.
And also, Davey, be ready for the Cincinnati Bengals. They can also be in the Baltimore boat here.
It's about that time of year. They make their little stretch. Chad, you kind of alluded to it. I mean, we talk about Kansas City. It's usually about their offense and what Patrick Mahomes has. They were able to beat the Miami Dolphins over in Germany. Travis Kelce had 3 receptions for 14 yards. So, I mean, you do have to start asking questions about their defense. And my overreaction comment for you guys is Kansas City has the best defense in the AFC.
I don't think that's an overreaction right now. I can't think of anyone head and shoulders better than them in the AFC, Hutton. So I'm going to say Davies nailed one here. I think they're the best defense in the AFC at this moment.
See, I still look at what Cleveland's been doing, and I also will point to the defense of the Jets just because they're 500 with Zach Wilson, and we're still talking about them in November. It's a defensive league right now, which is just
I think
crazy
there's more
to
fear
say.
in those defenses, right? Even the 49ers I'd put on that list.
Yeah.
Not AFC, obviously, but there's more fear of those, but KC's up there.
And I would – KC's there, yes. I would pay attention more to this question about KC being number one. Had I witnessed Miami beat a good team, and they haven't done that yet. They're averaging 17 points per game against teams with a winning record right now. That's, to me, KC was keeping up with what we've seen already from other organizations. And that's not knocking them. It's just I've seen it from Buffalo and also what we saw against Philadelphia.
Okay, guys, going into the season, we were talking about the AFC and the NFC South, both battling it out to who has the worst division. Right now, we know the Jaguars are running away with the AFC South, sitting at 6-2. So it leads me to say the NFC South division winner will have a losing record.
NFC South?
NFC South.
I would say Jacksonville's got a chance of being the number one overall seed in the AFC right now.
I'm taking them out of the equation. AFC, I think we got a good feel for how that division shaping up.
No, that's an overreaction. Here's why. New Orleans 5-4 right now. They are a favorite on the road in Minnesota. Then they get a late bye week after that. And after those games, guys, Atlanta, Carolina, the Giants, playing Carson Wentz and the Rams possibly later this season. Atlanta again in Tampa. They're going to finish 10-7. I feel confident in saying right now, I think the Saints win that division at 10-7.
I think this is down to the wire. I would bet New Orleans is 9-8, which is, saying no, this is not an overreaction, but also like I wouldn't bet on it. I think it's just down to whether or not Derek Carr is going to be the quarterback that he was signed to be, albeit quietly this offseason, or it's just the average run-of-the-mill 300-plus yard passing day and then regressing to the mean. I say they're one game above 500 at the end of the season, and we still view this as it really doesn't matter. No team out of that division is going to do much in the postseason.
I hear you. Well, I want to stay there. This is Arthur Smith's last year in Atlanta.
Yes. Because I think we're going to see the Cardinals beat them this week.
It's trending poorly. That mustache may not be the only thing to go of Arthur Smith's, and it could be his entire self out of Atlanta.
It's the reality of what the league is. The first 2 years he's been there, they were in salary cap hell. You know, they had to eat the contract of Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, and they couldn't do anything. And this past offseason was the first time they could actually do something, but they stuck with Ritter. And unless he's got some grand plan at quarterback, he's out. You would have to sell me on the fact that, you know, Ryan Tannehill is going to be the savior, just like he did wonders for Tennessee when Arthur Smith was there. He is working for an owner, though, in Arthur Blank, that has been very patient. He's got that going for him. But I think they'll find another head coach after this season.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the final hour is here for the Tuesday edition. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Glad you're with us. If you're listening to this great radio partner, we say thank you. If you're joining us on the live stream, you can join Chad in the chat right now on YouTube, outkick.com, and more. Coming up on the bus or off the bus with some big topics across the country, NFL and college football. Got some interesting matchups in college this week. I know Clay's already put out his money makers, his wagering and betting picks. Interesting line, Chad, between Tennessee and Missouri.
Yeah.
Based on the way Missouri performed against
that.
Georgia.
I was a little surprised. I feel like it was going to be kind of a field goal kick to Missouri just for home field advantage and sort of a pick'em game.
Yep.
But opened at Tennessee favored by 2.5 down to 1 last I checked. Tennessee -1 at Missouri. Some good college football games this weekend.
Yes.
I can't wait to dive into my top 10 a little bit later in the week. But it's only Tuesday, right?
That's right, yeah. We're 2 days away from the weekend.
These shows have been, good today or good this week, but I feel like the week is sort of creeping by.
We'll get into Michigan and Penn State with a question that
we
Davey
need it
has
to
coming
pick up. We need the week to get going swiftly.
Yeah?
In a Taylor Swift type fashion. We have talked Kelsey today, so that's the closest we've got to Taylor Swift.
Well, I mean, Kansas City is certainly just coming back from Germany. Is the question would be is the NFL and is Kansas City trying to be the global team, the world's team for the National Football League? They were one of 4 organizations that bid on, and won rights through the league. Remember when they did this a couple years ago to have marketing rights in certain countries? And as far as Germany is concerned, the Chiefs put in and got that. Now, they're talking about moving to putting a game in Berlin. And I believe Carolina is going to be that team that is going to be hosting that game, because Carolina is also a franchise that put in for the marketing rights in that country.
Yep.
Houston, of course, in Mexico City, I believe, that ties in. The Patriots.
Everyone believes it's going to be the Panthers that gets the next Germany game.
Right, because of the marketing rights. Now, a team will be told that they're going to be the visiting team of that game. But not every organization put in bids for marketing rights. Some did, some didn't. And in this case, Kansas City certainly wants to be spread out and known as that team. And you have the face of the league in Patrick Mahomes playing for the franchise. The small market of Kansas City, Missouri, getting that global push.
Well, and they had, I saw like a yacht that was in one of the rivers there in Frankfurt, and it was sort of the hub of all things Chiefs, where they had like displays of uniforms and memorabilia, and it just drew tons of people to that area throughout. It's really cool to see that. We see this with the English Premier League teams in the U.S. that have a huge following. Now we're seeing this with NFL teams abroad. When
Patriots
you look
have
at
Germany too, I believe.
I'm trying to rank just mentally the spots for games that are happening. I love the Germany series and games there. I like that they're eventually going to go to Dublin. Is the idea now? We watched Notre Dame and Navy open the season in Dublin this year. That's really cool. Next year, right? It's going to be Spain or Brazil, one or the other.
That's the thought.
Thought is it's going to be Spain first, then maybe Brazil. The one that I'm least excited about are games headed to Australia. I know the Rams have rights in Australia, but I see that, and I can't get all that excited about those games happening. They've even talked, Hutton, about those games taking place on like a Thursday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because of the time difference, that it would take place not on a maybe a Friday, would not take place on a Sunday.
So the Rams,
that's also one to watch.
You can tell where the NFL is going to be pushing games based on the international marketing rights that were awarded in 8 different countries to 18 teams. Australia, you're right with the Rams. Brazil is Miami, the Dolphins. Canada, Vikings and Seahawks. Makes total sense. In Germany, Carolina, Kansas City, New England, Tampa Bay. And in China, the Rams also have the international marketing rights there.
Well, the China one's going to be difficult to go play a game over there anytime
soon.
Well,
I'm saying they may open it back up again. If you had 18 clubs, who else wants in? Mexico has like 7 or 8 teams right now. Spain is Chicago and Miami. And in the UK, everyone from the Vikings and Jets and 49ers to Bears, Jags, and Dolphins are included.
Reading Peter King this week, he said Bears in Spain next year is likely to happen, with Miami playing in Germany this year, the other team with the rights
But
in
Miami
Spain.
also has Brazil, if you want to go there.
Yeah, but he thinks first it's going to be Bears playing a game in Spain.
And the top teams in the AFC are relatively small market programs, like organizations.
Well, it's cool to hear atmosphere at these games, and it sounded like a Chiefs home game when I was watching on early Sunday morning in Germany.
Yeah, and that was you're right. Even from not just from you're saying the music and the PA and
the crowd. When it was 4th and 10, it was roaring like a game at Arrowhead. I thought it was. Granted, it was 85% Chiefs fans in the building by both travel and German fans that were there, but it sounded like a Chiefs home game, which was cool.
This week, Patriots hosting the Colts in Germany. Another early morning kickoff this weekend. Time to go on the bus, or are we hopping off? There's more with Davey Hudson.
Guys, as we get on this bus for this week's edition, we're going to be starting in the great city of Buffalo, New York. The Bills, they have owned the AFC East the last several years. And so I pose to you all that the Buffalo Bills will win their 4th consecutive AFC East title.
They're not going to this year. I don't buy it. I've got Miami.
It's going to be the Dolphins. Something's wrong with the Bills.
Well, they're not. The offense isn't putting up points.
No, it's not clicking, and I can only say, they'll figure it out. The too many good players, Josh Allen, Diggs, all across the offense. I don't know that they're figuring it out. I'm off the bus on this. I think it's Miami's division also, even though we're talking about a Dolphins team that can't beat anyone that's good.
But as I pointed out yesterday, their next 6 games, the combined record of those opponents are 24-25. So we're not going to know about the Dolphins until after they win the division. And then what happens when they host a playoff game against a good team? That's when we find out about the makeup and moxie of the Miami Dolphins. The Bills, meanwhile, it's not like they have a crazy schedule coming up over the next couple of weeks, but once you hit Thanksgiving at Philly, and then they will play at Kansas City.
Do you have a bye in between those?
Okay, Philly, bye week at Kansas City, host the Dallas Cowboys, and then they hit the road right before Christmas against the Chargers. They close the season against Miami, I believe, but they also have one more with the Patriots.
Correct. Patriots then at Miami to close it out.
Yeah. So I view that, Chad, as when you compare that to the Miami schedule, Miami's got the schedule that sets up for what they do. They score a ton of points and win games against teams that are just very average or bad.
I do think that Week 18 game for Buffalo at Miami will determine the winner of the AFC East. I think it will come down to the final week. But, guys, we're going to head on, and we're going to Ann Arbor, Michigan. If you notice, we didn't cut through Canada. I don't technically have a passport, so we can't do that legally.
Got to get that passport, Dave.
Yeah, I know. I've been told that for the last 15 years. But anyway.
You're not on any list, are you? FBI list or anything? You're good to clear. You just haven't done it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
We'll go with that one.
Good.
Tony Petiti announces Michigan's punishment this week. We get some resolution.
I am on the bus with this happening. I think too many reports are out there about these conference calls, meetings in Ann Arbor. Something may come down this week. They got the notice that something is going to happen. I think it's all setting up, Hutton, for news tomorrow. I think that whatever the suspension is or whatever's going to happen, it will be sent to Michigan tomorrow and reported at that time.
My question would be...
And I think it's going to be a 2-game suspension, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and call it.
So just the standard suspension?
I think it's going to be 2 games for Harbaugh, and that is going to be negotiated beforehand, that Michigan's not going to fight back from that.
If it's just the standard suspension, and okay, if it happens this week and the standard suspension, sure, it comes down, news dump Friday. But do you do that right before... You do that before, any travel's done, right?
No, it's got to be done well before Penn State. So I think it's happening tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
Friday news dump. I mean, they can't unless Harbaugh knows a day and a half before he's not traveling.
Right. But okay.
Can't do it then.
I would also, if I'm the scheduling of when they announce this. So if it's more than the standard penalty, it goes before the committee of the Big Ten. What's the timetable for the committee to approve or reduce? Or
I think it's all done. Again, this is just my prediction. I think they've all pre-negotiated this. Committee, Petiti, Michigan. 2 games. Here's what it is. Don't fight us legally. Move forward. We've done something. I think that's what's going to happen tomorrow.
I don't know if it's been agreed to on the negotiated penalty, because we keep hearing about Harbaugh and Michigan ready to take it to court immediately. And Ward Manuel's not in attendance tonight with the committee for the college football playoff. He stayed back in Ann Arbor. All that's very peculiar to having something that's been agreed to.
I think putting that out there, though, helps Tony Petiti and the Big Ten sell to their members, we can't go over this or we're going to get sued, and he's just going to coach anyways. So it's not going to affect them at all because they're going to get an injunction. So I think even those reports about Michigan prepared to battle in court actually helps the Big Ten get through the penalty they ultimately want, which is 2 games.
Okay.
To try to appease everyone.
And to appease everyone on the 2 games, I would simply say, wait until we see their opponents face them and actually have some on-field justice to it. And if they're still unbeaten after Ohio State, then the agreed to 2-game suspension comes into play.
See, I believe...
Or see what happens against Penn State.
If they waited around and tried to do it for Maryland and Ohio State was one of those games, I think they'd legally fight then. I really think Michigan is prepared to let him sit for these 2 games and see what happens.
Back against Ohio State.
Back against Ohio State. And also, conspiracy brain going again. Boy, what that does for already ratings of great ratings for a game. That Harbaugh comes back from suspension for that one.
Okay.
Would be incredible.
We've also discussed a lot about the optics and the power that Petiti can show, right?
Yeah.
It would be the opposite. It would be a limp beta move to just do whatever Michigan wants in this case. I don't know. In moving forward and actually trying to do something, to be like, oh, they threatened to have the injunction, so it's just the standard violation. I don't know why you even bring it up if it's just the standard violation of a 2-game suspension.
I don't disagree with you at all, and I think that they're also afraid of getting sued, that Petiti's going to try to sell it as this is what we can do that's going to happen right now. It's either that or we try to say it's an indefinite suspension, and just the word indefinite is going to trigger a lawsuit that gets them an injunction, and Jim Harbaugh misses no time.
Well, it doesn't have to be
the
indefinite.
rest of the way.
But, it needs to be more than just 2 games and he's coaching during the week, which is what happened earlier this season, right? Like
I think I'm with you. I think a full 2-week suspension, that he's away from the team for 2 weeks.
Something. And then you have on the field an opportunity for the programs that are facing the pressure of beating Michigan to beat them.
Yeah, but Davey,
which
to
I
your
don't think they
question,
can.
On the bus, they find out this week. Something's coming down this week.
Too
much smoke to not have something
based on the
happen.
timing, and you're right. You're
It's
right.
all good. Yeah, it's tomorrow. I think tomorrow we'll know whether or not he's coaching for the Penn State game. But guys, heading on down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I don't have anything nice to say about that city, but Alabama wins the SEC.
I'm off the bus on this. It is Georgia until proven otherwise, and I feel like a broken record saying this over and over again. But man, oh man. We buried Carson Beck earlier in the year. Now he's 5th in the Heisman odds right now in Vegas. Their defense figures it out when they need to. Missouri had a ton of success running the football on them. Missouri had a ton of success a year ago against them. Should have beat them. Lost 26-22 up in Columbia, and that was a much worse Missouri team a year ago.
Yeah.
That team's better. Georgia still just figures out a way to get it done. And yes, Alabama has found a way to get it done also. Bama's back. They're going to be in that SEC championship game against Georgia. But Hutton, I still think it's Georgia's conference to win.
Yeah, I go to Georgia, and that's the only team that I see Bama losing to. Otherwise, I mean, it is a great coaching job by Saban this year.
2
months ago, roughly, we're discussing whether or not he's out and he's on to College game day.
Yeah.
And now he has totally turned that team around. And that team and all of the chatter behind the scenes and publicly questioning the program and the direction they were going at halftime of the Tennessee matchup, to do what they did in the second half, coming out of the locker room, tells you that Saban is still locked in to that group and that program.
I'm actually on the bus for this one, and part of my reasoning is I think Dallas Turner will target Carson Beck early on, and the rest won't blow their whistle. So that'll help with Georgia having to put their backup in the SEC championship. But moving right along, going to Houston, Texas next. Chad, you and
by the way, we could always say, Davey, that injuries will factor in. That's a given.
Well, no, I mean, I'm taking more of a shot at the SEC for not calling targeting on a guy that's knocked out 4 quarterbacks, and the fact that Lane Kiffin's even speaking up about it.
Yeah,
but
that was bad.
Dallas Turner, dirty player, simple as that. People can complain and say, no, he's just fighting hard. The dude goes limp leg every single time. He wants to shove all his weight onto the quarterback after the quarterback's already down.
It's also, by the way, a really smart penalty, even if he got the ejection, to knock out Jaden Daniels from a game, right? That's what's crazy about it is.
Or Jackson Dart. Or
more guys could start doing that if you use that as the example. It was bad. It was dirty.
We landed in Houston. You're on the bus for C.J. Stroud locking up offensive
With all
rookie
due
of the year.
respect to the great John McClain, he is the offensive rookie of the year. I am firmly on the bus on this one.
Yeah, he's locked it up right now for sure. No one was talking about his performance against Carolina. We're all talking about what he did this past week against Tampa.
Puka Nakua.
Dabo Swinney ripping his own fans. Dabo Swinney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Swinney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. But it's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. But Dabo Swinney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Swinney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Swinney's day, can I? Dabo Swinney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Swinney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Swinney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits or maybe the administration going and maybe watching film. Whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out what media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. And then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff, win some football games, and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair, and read a book instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Sixth and Peabody, our location, Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. They are here at their facility. Today is the Christmas load-in for the holiday season, Chad. When is here they want to they go all out, right? Mm-hmm. At the bar. So
yeah,
at the property, it's going to be decked out.
I love it.
Is your tree up right now?
It's not up right now. We wait until after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
But I will say, I have purchased eggnog.
Okay.
It is in the fridge right now.
Chad's a big fan of eggnog.
The moment it's available, which now is around mid-October, I think it's fair game for eggnog because it's so good. Should be a year-round treat, not just seasonal, but that's neither here nor there. And I did listen to my first bit of Christmas music earlier this week, only because one of the kids that I have in carpool that we pick up in the neighborhood, he requested, get ready for this, each day, I'm Monday, Wednesday, Friday carpool driver. And each day, one of my daughters is the DJ one day. The little boy picked up the DJ the other day. My youngest daughter is on Fridays. And on Monday, first song, he said, what do you want to listen to, buddy? All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey. That was the first song. So I said, okay, we're doing this. We're in the season. Here we go. It's jolly. It's bright. We're going to listen to some Christmas music. And
Chad
Hutton,
said,
got to admit, I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it as much as I thought hearing that Christmas music.
I would have said, your Christmas tree's up, isn't it?
Hutton would have said, how about something from Rammstein instead?
Not Rammstein.
Do you have any Black Sabbath?
Yeah. Can we listen to the Alabama Christmas album instead?
What is Pete Yorn? I'm trying to think of someone someone you would have requested, some singer-songwriter. But no Christmas tree yet.
Chad, the Texas Longhorns have said that Quinn Ewers is day-to-day, and Texas, and they're saying all the right, Sarkisian's saying all the right things about, hey, they're confident in what they're doing at quarterback right now in Malik Murphy. And I would be too, based on what happened this past weekend against Kansas State, because they nearly gave that game away with fumbles. But do you think we could see Arch Manning, for the Longhorns this season? That is something that no one is discussing. He's now the backup to Murphy as Quinn Ewers tries to get healthy. Whether or not they still make the Big 12 championship game in their final year there, that's certainly a topic. But what the factor and the perception of the Texas Longhorns getting that small glimpse of Arch Manning, if things aren't going well with Malik Murphy, that fascinates me, because we don't really know what we're getting once they get to the SEC in that regard. They know about Murphy. They know about what they have in Ewers, and it sucks that he's, having the shoulder issue. But what about Arch Manning?
I think we're only seeing him if Murphy goes down.
Yeah.
Murphy's been pretty good. The offense hasn't been a big problem since he came in, so he's not in danger of losing that job. The just curious me would love to see him in a pressure-packed situation this year. If I don't want to see Murphy get hurt, but if that were to happen,
just let him throw the ball away too.
That would be crazy to see him in a big game down the stretch with Texas, trying to cling to not just Big 12 championship hopes, but college football playoff hopes with Arch Manning playing. I know what Steve Sarkisian wants, and it's for him to not play this year and to slowly come along and not have to wilt under the weight of the expectation that's going to be there with Arch Manning whenever he is the guy and the starter. They want him to have more seasoning, more time on campus, more time with the offense before that happens. But part of me wouldn't mind seeing him put into a pressure-packed spot this year. But I not only think that happens if Malik Murphy goes down.
Well, the first depth chart that was released after the Ewers injury said Murphy or Manning.
Yeah.
And that's semantics. I get it. But Sarkisian's saying the right things about, yeah, we trust him. We're confident. He gives us a great chance to win. We're good. And by the way, Malik Murphy is packed with confidence and, the moxie. He didn't show it post-game against K-State threw 2 picks in that game, but that was uncharacteristic for him. I like the option that he gives Texas. I just think the storyline of Manning coming in and trying to lead the Longhorns to the Big 12 championship in their final year as a freshman I think it would be
puts
amazing. A bow on everything.
Oh, it'd be incredible, and to get that sneak peek of what it's going to be like once he's not around the program, but starting with that program full time. I just still see it as it's going to have to be either injury or a really, really poor performance from Malik Murphy, which we have not seen yet, for him to relinquish that job and for Sarkisian to want to go that direction right now. The plan has always been pretty simple, was he sits this year, he learns, and then probably next year he's the starter for the Longhorns.
TCU also has their quarterback issues. They're hosting Texas this weekend. Then Texas goes on the road to Iowa State. That's where the loss could come. And then they will host Texas Tech just before Thanksgiving. That's their remaining schedule.
Not a bad setup.
No, I still think Texas makes the Big 12 championship game.
No, I do too. I think they'll be there.
Against what, Oklahoma State?
Possibly. It's crazy the way, there was a 5-way tie this past week atop the Big 12 with teams with one loss. I think we're possibly looking at Texas versus Oklahoma State. Gundy trying to be the one that issues the deliverance of both Oklahoma and Texas as they depart the SEC or the Big 12 for the SEC in the same season. That'd be something.
Chad, we discussed about 10 minutes ago, Tony Petiti issued the deliverance of punishment to Michigan, and would it come this week? If it does, I know you expect it, and it's a great point to expect it tomorrow. What message do you hope he sends in whatever comes down? And should it go before their committee to approve it? That way there is a firm and decisive message sent, not just from the commissioner, but from the conference.
What I want, Hutton, is for Tony Petiti to be 100% definitive, one way or the other. I do not want vague. I do not want half measures. I want him to either come in there tomorrow and lay down the law and say, you have gone above and beyond. I don't give a damn if you say you didn't know about it. You are the head of this program, and I've got 13 other coaches and ADs that are angry with you over this. We are suspending you indefinitely, and you're going to be done for the rest of this year, Jim Harbaugh. Or you're not eligible for the Big Ten championship. Or, Hutton, again, this is what I want. I want a definitive answer from Tony Petiti. The other response would be, guys, you're all doing this BS to different levels. You've all had each other's signs. You're circulating Rutgers, Ohio State, whatever the report is. You're circulating Michigan signs, giving it to Purdue. You're sharing intel, this and that. What they did was illegal. It is above and beyond, but this is an NCAA matter. And while we have all the info on Michigan, I've got enough info on everyone else also that I've been handed that I know the sportsmanship policy is in jeopardy for all of you. So what we're going to do is play this season out. If you hate Jim Harbaugh and Michigan so much, go out there and beat them a couple times the rest of the way. And until then, shut up. We're not doing anything. The NCAA can do it. This is an NCAA matter. I'm not going to weigh in on it. What I think we're going to get, though, Hutton, is what's going to kill me, is the half measure, the sort of in-between. While this is an NCAA issue, ultimately, The verdict rests with them 2-3 years down the road. They're not going to put that part in, but it'll happen 2 or 3 years down the road. We have enough information. We've got enough video. We got enough ticket receipts. We got enough Venmo transactions. We got enough testimony to say that Michigan violated the rules and they violated the sportsmanship policy. So we're going to suspend Jim Harbaugh for 2 games, which we already pre-negotiated. That part's not going to be in there either, but that's going to be what they've done with Michigan, and then we're going to move forward. That is what I think will happen. But what I want is them to be definitive on it one way or the other.
I hope they are too. Just from the common sense landscape of things, why would you open the door to this possible penalty if all it is the standard violation of a sportsmanship policy? And why is the NCAA wasting their time if it's just a standard violation of the Big Ten sportsmanship policy?
Well, it's not to the NCAA. The NCAA, this is far worse for them and the violations that they're doing. This would be the Big Ten saying that part is the NCAA's. The part that we're going to legislate right now is what we've heard from other coaches, that you have violated our sportsmanship policy, so we are going to do what we can do right now, and that is do a 2-week suspension. The rest will ultimately allow the NCAA. But this is Tony Petiti's opportunity, Hutton, and you illustrated this to start the show, to say, we know. It's what Ryan Walters said last week to the media. Well, it's not a guess. We know what they did. Everyone knows what they've been doing. So what are we waiting on? This is Petiti's chance to say, this is really bad. We're going to treat it as such, and we're going to levy a hefty punishment.
Well, and I hope that comes, because if you're going to present things as we're doing this because the NCAA won't do it. They won't step in a timely fashion, and they're afraid of being sued. Keep in mind what Jim Harbaugh said in a statement when this story broke initially. I want to make it clear that I and my staff will fully cooperate with the investigation into this matter. And he's responding to the NCAA, who informed the Big Ten, who then informed Michigan of this. But he went on to say, I do not have any knowledge or information regarding the University of Michigan football program illegally stealing signs, nor have I directed staff members or others to participate in off-campus scouting assignments. I have no awareness of anyone on our staff having done that or having been directed in that action. So the first sentence, I want to make it clear that I and my staff will fully cooperate with the investigation into this matter. To go from that, which was earlier in early October, to go from that to then now reports coming out that they are sitting back ready immediately, almost immediately, to file a court action that would bring forth an injunction. To me, that doesn't coincide with fully cooperating and then negotiating said suspension and then putting out or leaking that you're sitting back waiting to file the suit in court. That seems and resonates to me as this is a threat that would get the NCAA to back off, not bring forward some negotiated suspension. With, by the way, the decision makers would not agree to with Harbaugh earlier this season. Michigan self-imposed a 3-game suspension for recruiting violations. And a 2-game suspension on behalf of the Big Ten stepping in is going to be considered, well, we're doing what we can. I think at this point, it's not been agreed to, Chad. And that's why Michigan's being proactive by pushing other storylines or trying to, and also through CBS, a close source to Harbaugh in the ongoing situation speculated that a court action would be filed almost immediately.
Yeah, I hope you're right, because I kind of want chaos in all this. And we'll find out, I think, tomorrow. We'll probably get some sort of news on what the Big Ten's going to do, or if they're doing nothing.
What about this same report that says they could just withhold television money and potentially postseason bowl money as part of this?
I think it's weak, quite frankly, based on what's going on.
What we don't know, though, is how steep the penalty could be. It could be more than just indefinite suspension for the head coach.
Yeah, look, I mean, Tennessee just got the biggest fines in the history of the NCAA as part of the Jeremy Pruitt investigation, and no one nationally cared because they didn't lose bowl eligibility. They didn't look like, the slap on the wrist. And I'm thinking, A lot of money, but okay. That's the biggest fines in the history of the NCAA that Tennessee lost and all that. But that's what I think in this, everyone's going to view that as no big deal. Because while it's not true, they think, it's just an endless supply of cash.
But that's
not going to be a big punishment.
But that would be the same as an indefinite suspension to me, because an indefinite suspension would keep him out of that, and you would have more than a penalty of just, you're not going to be the Big Ten representative. To me, that sends the message that you're at least on board with that, even if you know the injunction's coming and the court would allow them to play or coach or whatever. In the meantime, at least you can say that, to me, that would be, and it would be approved by a committee, that would be the message sent that we did what we could, and now we have to do this through the system of not just the court, but now we also await what the NCAA would do. And by the way, this is something Petiti has said he doesn't want to do, which is be battling something like this through the courts around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's why
that sets up your theory.
I think if he does anything, he's already talked to Michigan about it, and they're negotiating what it is that's going to happen to where they're not going to get sued. He's going to do something that doesn't get him sued, and he's going to know beforehand that it's not going to get him sued. I'd love to be surprised on that, where he just comes in and says, suspended indefinitely, and then we get a lawsuit immediately. But I don't think it's going to happen.
I think a lot of people are surprised, though, that Petiti's even doing this.
Allie in the YouTube chat posed a question that we're going to ask coming back. Hashtag WWSD. What would Sankey do? That is a fascinating topic, because these two men, one of them could emerge as the leader of college football between Petiti and Sankey. We'll discuss when we come back.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump now at least have to see, like, senile, not all there, probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay. Why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro.
There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well. Yeah. And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Sixth, the Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. College football playoff rankings later this evening. We'll discuss that in a moment. Chad, Allie in the chat asks,
What would Sankey do under the same circumstances? Now, let's just say a team, Alabama, all right, is under the same deal. Big-time brand, national program like Michigan, right? How would Greg Sankey handle this?
Chad, he would handle it the same way that Petiti's doing it. Imagine if this is Brian Kelly, Kirby Smart, Josh Heupel, go through all the coaches. They're voicing their complaints about said program, and this one is hypothetically Bama. We could switch it up and say Georgia, Tennessee, whoever. If you have that same support, I think he would be doing the same thing. The question I would have is Alabama or Georgia threatening the same type of legal action? Because Michigan's been floating this out there for a while, right?
Yeah.
And it would also, this would be a reaction from fan bases on whatever upper you want to point to, because you're in the region of the heartbeat of college fans that either hate each other or they're arm in arm because they hate the team that's involved in said scandal.
Well, so here's my answer to this. Greg Sankey would do nothing if it was Alabama. He would do nothing if it was one of the top dogs in the SEC. Well, I firmly believe that.
Do nothing, or to me, if Petiti just comes with a standard deal, that's also doing nothing.
Is there even a sportsmanship policy in the SEC? I know they suspend people for fights and things like that, so I'm sure there is. The league can suspend guys for, basketball teams get into a fight, someone may get suspended for 1 or 2 games coming out of the fight. That stuff happens. I'm just answering the question honestly. I don't think Greg Sankey would do a thing if this was Alabama on the other side of it. I think he might hear people out and pretend to care what they're saying, but I don't think Greg Sankey, and maybe this is a difference between the two, I don't think he would do anything ever to harm one of his teams that has a shot at winning a national championship in season. He would simply put out a blanket statement, this is an NCAA matter, and the NCAA will investigate it. My hands are clean. We are playing this thing out. We know they're not going to come back with anything right now, and we're going to see what happens with this team. I honestly don't think he would do much of anything. Because his response now is, well, this will lead to communication devices and helmets.
Right, and that's the stand. See, I think that is the strategy to play if you're looking to get 2 teams in the playoff this year. And the path is there if you believe that Petiti or the Big Ten could step in and keep one of theirs and the best chance, the best possible program to make it to the playoff out, and do it by their own decisions, right? Their own committee, and point to a violation of the sportsmanship policy. And the path would be you have Georgia, who in this situation, this hypothetical, Michigan would beat Ohio State, number 1 team. They'd move up. Georgia would be number 1. And then you would have Bama beat Georgia in the SEC title game. That's the path the 2 teams from the SEC in, because Michigan's not participating based on the Big Ten and their decision in this. That gets you 2 teams in again. I'm not saying I'm predicting that. That's just the strategy behind, we're going to have helmets where quarterbacks can communicate. But the other aspect too, Chad, is if you had your member schools demanding action and he didn't do it just because it's Bama, there's no way that Sankey wouldn't act based on the majority. I think, too, the coaches in the SEC would be so much more vocal and out front about it. You think Kiffin and Brian Kelly, who even has an injury report weekly, they're all going to comment on that.
They would talk. Kiffin talked today about, as Davey mentioned, the Dallas Turner hit on Daniels, saying it's ridiculous.
He's like, if that's not targeting, I don't know what is. Or roughly the pass. But my overall point is, I think there would be much more public sentiment for Sankey to act, because no one really trusts the NCAA, but no one really knows Tony Petiti. You know, half the public doesn't know how to say his last name. So with Sankey, it would be way different, and everyone just acknowledges he's the guy in charge behind the scenes. The demand would be for him to be more out front with it, based on the situation and because of who it is.
Yeah, and let me also say, not just Alabama, Georgia, pick a team, Florida, Auburn.
LSU.
Yeah, LSU, big-time program on their way to a possible national title, undefeated. I just don't think Greg Sankey's doing anything to any of them, regardless of what the rest of the conference says. But maybe I'm wrong, and I think tomorrow we might find out what Tony Petiti does in this situation.
Where I will agree with, I need to see what the punishment is, or the proposed punishment, and then would Sankey meet this as a possible punishment? Chad, while I've been discussing that, it's a good question by Allie. I'm going through and trying to find the actual policy for sportsmanship in the SEC. Surely they have one. They have an ethics category in their rules.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming it's something like that. Jake asked the question, what did Sankey do when Tennessee was under investigation? It's totally different. It's completely, you gotta remove your mind from like the typical NCAA illegal benefit, whether it be a fast food bag of cash or a shoe company getting involved or whatever it is. We're talking about very different allegations here with Michigan. And it is an orchestrated, planned system of espionage to get signs with a guy who was paid just to do that within the program and went illegally against NCAA rules and scouted off site many times over. This wasn't a once or twice thing. This was a whole orchestrated plan. It's completely different. Conferences are not getting involved when there's any investigation or allegations of someone paying a player or something going on. I can't recall a time where a conference commissioner's come in and said, did the conference come in and say, hey, Cam Newton can't play anymore when they went on and won the national title in 2010? No, it doesn't happen. So, again, just completely different stories.
Well, the other thing is that the sentiment of said story and the demand for something to happen. The meeting took place where you have the coaches. What was the phrase? Was vast majority?
Yeah, the vast majority of coaches.
Their thoughts on you've got to do something.
Call. Yep.
Yeah, that also plays into the discussion of what the commissioner would do. Instead of just if everything's equal and there's no buzz underneath the surface of the story, and the NCAA is doing their investigation, which happens a lot, what the reaction would be. It also, it's more about what the chancellors, the presidents, and the coaches and the ADs are saying outside of the program that's being looked at and demanding than it is anything. anything that the media or the fans want.
Yeah.
I think he would do something. I don't know how harsh it would be.
I just don't. I think he would act like he was doing something. And I'm not saying that's a dumb approach. Knowing Greg Sankey, he's all about the business of the SEC and making sure that the SEC teams that are good are in position to do something big nationally. So I just don't think. I don't think that would. Don't think that would happen. Nicole Auerbach, by the way. This came 8 minutes ago from The Athletic. Michigan has sent documents to the Big Ten and the NCAA that it believes shows that Purdue, Ohio State, and Rutgers were sharing Michigan signals. This has now been sent to the Big Ten. Story coming shortly, but sources said Purdue received Michigan signals from Ohio State and Rutgers, which we knew. This was 42 seconds ago. Again, not the same thing. If you get it off the TV broadcast or you get it off the All-22, it's very different. So Michigan's not claiming they have evidence of some sort of operation the way Connor Stalions led an operation for Michigan, right? They're claiming they were sharing info about them, which does sound like it could be in violation of a sportsmanship policy, but I don't know. I don't know how Tony Petiti is going to view this. But it does. I do get the sense, Hutton, that this is becoming more and more of a, you're going to shovel dirt and you know what on us, we're going to shovel it right back. And right before the ruling comes down, let's get all of our little birdies out there to chirp, chirp, chirp and tell us everything we know, and we're going to shove that information to the Big Ten and get it out there to friendly media and let them report on it. This is Michigan's last-ditch effort to try to show something. I don't know what they're showing other than, hey, we did it worse than everybody else, but everybody else does it too. So, show mercy on us. That's basically what they're saying.
Yeah, and let's also put into the discussion of what the other commissioners would do. This would also be the equivalent of like John Jancic, who's on the staff for Brian Kelly. Let's use LSU instead of Bama. John Jancic is wearing like Middle Tennessee State gear in week 1 against Bama, standing on the visiting sideline with sunglasses on with the light going. I mean, you think that wouldn't be different than John Jancic sending a Word document or a spreadsheet?
Here's what we think we have on them.
Right. And sharing that info. And then also, like, how did you obtain that info? And is it against the sportsmanship policy? Because specifically, from the NCAA's viewpoint, what's against the rules is off-site scouting, not obtaining information during a game. And how would you prove where you received that info and how? If I'm Michigan and you want to spread dirt and throw dirt on others and create and dig a hole for someone else's grave, you don't go through just sharing information about who else is trying to steal signs. You do something else that's really black and white against the rules that you know and can prove has been going on, that you've stayed silent on because, quote unquote, everyone's doing it. That's how you divert the attention to someone else.
I think Michigan people think this is like a huge revelation. It's weak sauce is what it is. This is their last-ditch effort to try to show something that, they had ours too. We're talking about two very different things. And at the heart of this, what I want to find out is if Michigan was going not just to create a competitive advantage for themselves or try to, but to affect other games, not involving them, right? It is one thing for Ohio State and Rutgers to say, hey, this is what we have. We want us in the playoff standings.
And I also, if I'm Petiti, I want to wait until I figure out how many people were in the circle of trust for this. Because it's not just Connor Stalions going to the Central Michigan sideline.
Yeah, how deep
does
it go?
It's got people waiting to go to a Vanderbilt-Tennessee game, right? And then doesn't need to because South Carolina beat Tennessee. But there's a trust factor there that no one's going to, talk about what you're doing when you turn in these calls and how you're obtaining them. And hopefully they're smarter and they don't wear Michigan gear while doing so or another team's gear on the sidelines. Davey, you have a line from the SEC code of conduct?
Yes. So they have a whole thing under sportsmanship, but essentially under the commissioner, which Greg Sankey would have full authority. This is Article 4. It states, Section E, the commissioner is the official conference interpreter of Constitution, bylaws, commissioners, regulations, and other rules, regulations, and legislations and policies of the conference and the NCAA. He has the ability to do that, but then under penalties, it talks about he can pretty much impose any fine, suspension, or anything that is not specifically relegated to the CEOs, which would be your presidents or your athletic directors for each member institution.
There you go.
He could do it.
Broad power.
Yeah.
And something he could do. I don't think he would, though. Just like Petiti's not going to do much.
Someone needs to step up. Join us tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern.